Chapter 38-33. In an instant, Jade Archive Xiaohua's figure also swayed, like a lamp in the wind. After a few times, Jade Archive Xiaohua's figure became clear, but at this time, Jade Archive Xiaohua's face was pale. What? Is there going to be a disaster? Jade Archive Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the karma hand that had hidden in the starry sky. He whispered bitterly, "This disaster is too big to be stopped. If it's not handled properly, it's inevitable that I'll end up dead. Where did this disaster come from? Is it Dragon Island? Or the Immortal Palace? Or something else? And this disaster can't be avoided. Even if I go into seclusion, this disaster will come. Could it be the Immortal Palace? That's impossible. Although I escaped from the Immortal Palace's attack that day, my cultivation was only at the late Yuanying stage. With Sun Jian's character, he wouldn't exaggerate. How could it attract the attention of the Immortal Palace? Could it be the trip to the Dragon Palace? No, it doesn't seem like it. If there's a problem with the trip to the Dragon Palace, I just have to go into seclusion. Forget it." Jade Archive Xiaohua thought for a moment, but still had no clue. In particular, the message from Karma Xiaohua was too vague. Jade Archive Xiaohua only felt that this crisis was very special, but he couldn't tell how special it was or when it would happen. "Be careful. When it happens, I'll deal with it by sticking to the status quo. My cultivation is still not enough." Xiaohua's mind came out of the space. He opened his eyes and looked at the clouds and mist around him. He took a deep breath and sighed secretly. This warning is so vague. It's not only because the origin of the disaster is unclear, but also because Karma Xiaohua can only deduce in the space. If I can perform the complete karma method, I may be able to find some clues. Master, this method is very similar to the one I practiced before. Seeing Xiaohua open his eyes, Wu Tian said carefully, "It's just that the absorption and refining of the qi of heaven and earth are a bit strange. I've completely mastered it." "Good." Xiaohua collected his thoughts and nodded. "Master will call Lu Yi and the others out. Tell them about the differences in cultivation in detail." Wu Tian was a Jin and cultivator, so explaining the cultivation method to Lu Yi and the other aura refining disciples was naturally as easy as lifting a finger. When Xiaohua released the group of disciples from the Kunlun mirror, Wu Tian carefully explained the differences between the two cultivation methods. Lu Yi and the others were all peerless geniuses, so they only needed to ponder a little bit to understand. However, they didn't know why Xiaohua suddenly asked Wu Tian to teach them such a strange cultivation method. Xiaohua didn't explain much and said to Wu Tian, "Bring the group of junior brothers back to the Kunlun mirror first, and test out the new cultivation method. Come out after that. I still have some things to ask you." "Yes, master." After Wu Tian respectfully agreed, Xiaohua put them into the Kunlun wonderland in his space. "Fujiwen." Xiaohua turned around and asked, "Where are we now?" When Fujiwen heard this, he couldn't help but feel surprised. He used the eye-clearing technique to take a look and whispered, "Master, this place is very unfamiliar. I don't know either, but it seems that it should be within Yu Province." "Oh? Why are we still in Yu Province?" Xiaohua didn't find it strange when he heard this. Yu Province was originally big, and he was flying around blindly before, so it wouldn't be strange even if they were circling around the soaring Dragon Mountain range. "Go and inquire about it," Xiaohua instructed. Not long after, Fujiwen flew back and said with a smile, "Master, we're still in Yu Province. Right now, we're in the territory of Donglin country. Around us are Qizhan country, Lin country, Xian country, and Yifeng country." "Yifeng country?" Xiaohua raised his eyebrows. He immediately thought of the high-spirited Yu Zhongquan who wholeheartedly wanted to be a ranger. "Master, do you have any goals for this experiential learning? Or just walk around casually?" When Fujiwen saw that Xiaohua only let him and Wu Tian out, he knew what Xiaohua meant and asked carefully, "Master wants to go to the North Sea." Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "However, there's still enough time. Take Master to Yifeng country." Yes, master. The North Sea was naturally very far away for Fu Jiwen. Fu Jiwen knew that he might not be able to reach there in a short time even if he rode on a Pegasus. However, since Xiaohua said there was enough time, then there was enough time. He bowed and answered, then raised his hand and patted the Pegasus, indicating that it should fly to Yifeng country. Watching Fu Jiwen riding on the Pegasus, Xiaohua waved his hand again. The black bear, golden eagle, and white lion appeared on the flying carriage. The three demonic beasts looked around and hurriedly knelt down. Master, do you want us to pave the way for Master? No need. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, This old master had previously promised all of you that I would find a suitable cultivation method for all of you. When the time is right, I will teach it to all of you. Many thanks, master. The black bear spirit and the other two demonic beasts were overjoyed and hurriedly kowtowed. Xiaohua smiled and helped the three demonic beasts up, saying, In fact, this old master was planning to test your temperament before telling you. However, now that our fortune gate has just been established, we need all of you to contribute. The stronger you are, the better it is for our fortune gate. Therefore, today, I will teach all of you the cultivation method. Master, this lowly one swears to the heavens that this lowly one is loyal and devoted to Master and the fortune gate. The black bear spirit was the most quick-witted. After Xiaohua finished speaking, he immediately forced out a drop of blood essence from his body and swore the demonic beast alliance. Beside him, the white lion and golden eagle also swore an oath. Seeing the strange fluctuations in the air, Xiaohua raised his hand and held the 3 drops of blood essence in his hand. He ordered, Black Bear, bring me the white lion and golden eagle's natal spirit tablets. Natal spirit tablets? The black bear blanked for a second, then understood. He hurriedly took out the jade token that Xiaohua had used to force the 2 demonic beasts to swear an oath on the Black Wind Ridge. Quick! Xiaohua waved his hand, and 3 drops of blood essence landed on the jade token. The red light on the jade token disappeared in a flash. Xiaohua did not return the jade token to the black bear, but kept it for himself. He said, This old master will take this jade token first. As long as all of you are sincere to our fortune gate and follow this old master will definitely return all of you your freedom after 1,000 years. Hee, master is speaking outside the box. The black bear laughed. This lowly one has no ill intentions towards master. It doesn't matter whether we have this natal spirit tablet or not. If master likes it, he can take it for 10,000 years. Yes, this lowly one also has the same thoughts. The white lion and golden eagle hurriedly answered. And that's for the best. Xiaohua smiled as he looked at the black bear. The black bear saw a trace of dark green in Xiaohua's eyes, and felt a sharp pain in the space between his eyebrows. Shortly after, countless totems swarmed into his body. These totems were the demonic bear's cultivation postures, and a series of cultivation secret techniques rippled out from these totems and rushed into his mind. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua turned his head and looked at the golden eagle. By the time Fu Jiwen stopped the flying carriage in the sky above Yifeng country, Xiaohua had already sent the demonic beast clan's inheritance suitable for the 3 demonic beasts to cultivate into their minds. Seeing the 3 demonic beasts' bodies tremble slightly, and some inexplicable fluctuations emitted from their bodies from time to time, Fu Jiwen knew that this was an important matter, so he didn't dare to disturb them. He only stood quietly beside the Pegasus. Xiaohua withdrew his supernatural power and closed his eyes slightly. Ever since he obtained the inexplicable bloodline of the absolute saint in the relic world, his body was constantly undergoing subtle changes. Even starlight power that couldn't be detected by supernatural powers constantly fell into the 13,200 million blood essences in his body. These blood essences were transforming, and the inheritance within the blood essences was also merging into Xiaohua's bloodline. At the same time, countless demonic beast totems also rushed into Xiaohua's bloodline and entered the body of the demonic phoenix Xiaohua. There were so many totems that they had already impacted the demonic spirit Xiaohua's cultivation. Xiaohua also took the opportunity to temporarily stop practicing the blood drop paradise technique, allowing these totems to attack his bloodline. Through the demonic spirit Xiaohua could clearly see that the golden threads in his bloodline were becoming clearer and clearer. Moreover, when the totems attacked, an inexplicable golden light flashed from time to time. Every time it flashed, it unconsciously brought about a kind of comprehension, and there was even a kind of indescribable, obscure fluctuation hidden in the void, its whereabouts unknown. Taking advantage of this gap, Xiaohua's consciousness once again entered the mysterious dark clouds. However, at this time, the sky seemed to be gloomy. Above the soul cultivator Xiaohua's head, a heavy dark cloud was tightly pressed there. The dense soul threads were like the texture of granite, revealing a dignified and thick feeling, different from all the soul threads before. How is it? Jade Archive Xiaohua's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at this layer of dark clouds that couldn't be detected, and asked in a low voice. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua appeared in front of Jade Archive Xiaohua and slightly shook his head. I have tried countless times. This dark cloud is abnormal and abnormal. I can't break through it at all. Granny, Xiaohua, this thing is too strange. Xiao Bai waved his huge dragon body and shouted. Even the star splendor sky from before, and even the spirit chi sky from before wasn't so difficult to figure out. Don't worry, Jade Archive Xiaohua said indifferently. The gap between the soul-sealing sky and the heart-breaking sky is the difference between a soul scholar and a shaman. From the perspective of my Dao school, it is the difference between a nascent soul and a spirit-severing stage. This layer depends on luck. That's the only way. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua closed his eyes. The endless soul threads around his body began to dance. The faintly discernible fragrance of the underworld fruit floated in the air along with the soul threads in the entire heart-breaking sky. After Xiaohua's consciousness left the mysterious dark clouds, several hours had passed. The golden eagle was the first to open its eyes. The confusion in its eyes disappeared in a flash, and then it cawed out again full of gratitude. Many thanks, Master. At this time, the words, Master, came from the heart more than ever before. The golden eagle understood in its heart that the master of the Tao school in front of it was far from the human cultivator of the Tao school in the eyes of ordinary people. And, golden eagle, Xiaohua nodded. How much have you forgotten? Master. A trace of fear flashed in the golden eagle's eyes, and it respectfully replied. This little one has forgotten 70%. -13. Chapter 38-34. So much? Xiaohua was slightly stunned. After all, the inheritance he gave to the golden eagle and the other two demons was not particularly high level. It was just a relatively low-level inheritance among the 13,200 million inheritances. I've disappointed Master. The golden eagle lowered its head and said in a low voice. Xiaohua thought for a moment and asked, Just with the remaining 30%, how far can you cultivate? Master. The golden eagle still had a difficult expression as it replied. 5% of the 30% is gradually disappearing. This little one thinks that at most there will only be 25% left. But with this inheritance, this little one doesn't dare to say how far this little one can cultivate. If there is enough time, this little one can cultivate to the Natian realm. And this old man understands. This is not your fault. You can cultivate as much as you want. Xiaohua nodded. This old man has also left a cave residence for you three demons in the Kunlun Immortal realm. You can go in and take a look. Many thanks, Master. The golden eagle cawed out again. After sending the golden eagle into the space, Xiaohua looked at the white lion and the black bear. He was a little curious as to who would wake up first and how much they would forget. After another hour, the white lion opened its eyes. Its reaction was the same as the golden eagle's. However, to Xiaohua's surprise, the white lion had forgotten 60% and was also forgetting more than 5%. It seems that, the more you wake up, the more you remember. After sending the white lion into the space, Xiaohua looked at the black bear spirit who was as timid as a mouse with interest. Although Xiaohua had high hopes for the black bear spirit, the black bear spirit's bloodline was not much stronger than the white lion's. After an hour, the black bear spirit also woke up. He only remembered 5% more than the white lion. However, Xiaohua understood that this 5% was enough for the black bear spirit to cultivate to the devouring the sky realm. It was also enough for the black bear spirit's bloodline inheritance to step into the realm of experts. Perhaps this is all this old man can do now. Xiaohua faced the black bear spirit, who was now even more devout, and smiled. If you want to transcend mortality and become a saint, then this old man can only help you in the future and replace your blood essence. My greatest ambition in the past was to become the king of Black Wind Ridge. The black bear spirit's answer was not out of Xiaohua's expectations. Right now, this little one's greatest ambition is to guard the door for Master. No matter what cultivation this little one has, this little one will always be the black bear that guards the door for Master. Haha, go and cultivate. Xiaohua waved his sleeves and sent the black bear spirit into space. He said, I'm looking forward to having a great demon saint to guard my cave abode. After sending the black bear spirit into the space, Xiaohua released the golden eagle and asked a few questions. The result did not disappoint Xiaohua. There were 6 solar stars and 3 lunar stars in the space. The power of the stars and the moon was extremely abundant. It was more suitable for demons to cultivate than any place in the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. Seeing Xiaohua put the golden eagle back into the space again, Fu Jiwen asked respectfully, Master, now that we've arrived in Yifeng country, please tell me what to do. However, before Xiaohua could say anything, Fu Jiwen's body suddenly trembled. Then, strands of true qi emerged from the top of Fu Jiwen's head in an extremely disorderly manner. In particular, there were inscriptions condensing into formation talismans that flew out without warning. Some formed flying swords, some formed armor, and some even rushed towards Xiaohua. Master, save me! Fu Jiwen's face was ashen, but his trembling limbs did not seem to listen to Fu Jiwen's control. Even when Fu Jiwen called for help, the corners of his mouth twitched. Sigh! Xiaohua sighed. With a wave of his hand, he restrained Fu Jiwen. With a grab of both hands, thousands of inscriptions fell into his hands and transformed into the shape of a broken scroll. Looking at the flickering clouds of the inscriptions in the scroll, Xiaohua shook his head slightly. Disciple, what Master was worried about has finally happened. Master! Fu Jiwen was ashamed. He said, This disciple is ashamed of Master's guidance. You can't say that you're ashamed, Xiaohua said. Looking at your diligent cultivation and rapid progress. Actually, Master is very happy in his heart. However, when Master first saw you, you were still a scholar. Your cultivation was just refining essence into qi, and you could be considered a scholar. In just a few decades, you actually broke through to the realm of great confusion. If this news were to spread, I'm afraid it would scare people to death. Disciple, do you still remember the maze on Cloud Mountain? In Senior Tsumlangzi's cave, you very boldly said to Master that as long as you accumulated a little bit, you could probably enter the realm of great confusion within 3 years. Do you know how surprised Master was at that time? I'm not surprised at your progress, but rather, I'm surprised that you're biting off more than you can chew. Actually, Master felt that if you could enter the realm of great confusion within 300 years, it would already be very amazing. But what could Master say? You had just condensed the heavenly book and were in high spirits. Although Master was worried, Master could not discourage you. Master could only encourage you at that time. Yes, disciple. Fu Jiwen lowered his head, not daring to say anything more. Disciple, the path of cultivation is a long and arduous one. It takes a lifetime to walk it. Perhaps there are some opportunities that can speed up your cultivation, but shortcuts are never the right way. Xiaohua said very seriously. Any action that is short-sighted will lead to failure. Master has always wanted to find time to talk to you about this, but Master also has to cultivate, and Master also has a lot of things to do during this period of time. I only gave you a little reminder in the Fortune Palace, but you didn't seem to hear it at all. Actually, disciple, you don't have to care too much. When Master was cultivating in the past, he was also as aggressive as you, and also suffered a big loss. You are worried about Bayan, and want to enter the realm of great confusion as soon as possible, and want to see Bayan as soon as possible. But if you are too impatient, you won't be able to eat hot tofu, and when the time comes, won't you make Bayan even more disappointed? Yes, disciple understands. Fu Jiwen was sweating like rain. Forget it. Xiaohua waved his hand, and a crystal light fell into Fu Jiwen's body. After a while, Fu Jiwen's body could already move. Master will temporarily seal most of your heavenly books. You have to carefully comprehend these sealed heavenly books, and you have to carefully comprehend the cultivation method of Confucian cultivators. Walk step by step, don't run. Yes, disciple understands. Fu Jiwen replied in a low voice. Well, don't think too much. Follow Master down and bring Master to find Yifeng country's Yu clan. Xiaohua instructed. Yes, Master. Fu Jiwen calmed his mind and rode the heavenly horse down. When Xiaohua kept the heavenly horse and the flying carriage, Fu Jiwen had already found the location of the Yu clan. Yifeng country was not big, even smaller than Jiang country. With Xiaohua's ability, he could completely detect it with a sweep of his divine sense. However, because of the previous warning, Xiaohua did not want to attract any trouble, and did not dare to be careless. He only followed Fu Jiwen outside Yifeng country's capital. Looking at the not-so-majestic city walls and the simple villagers entering and leaving the city gate, Xiaohua somewhat understood. The Yu clan was not a great family of Confucian cultivators. From the information that Fu Jiwen found out, the Yu clan was only a secondary 7th-rank aristocratic family. The so-called great Confucian cultivator that came out was probably many years ago. Only this kind of small country would be able to support the Yu clan. Yifeng country's city gate was also guarded by soldiers, and it seemed that the inspection was very strict. Occasionally, there would be some people who looked like spies being arrested. This made the atmosphere in and out of the city gate a bit tense. However, with Xiaohua's ability and Fu Jiwen's identity as a Confucian cultivator, entering Yifeng country was not a difficult matter. When the two people arrived in front of the Yu residence, Xiaohua frowned again. The layout of the Yu residence was very large, occupying dozens of acres of land in Yifeng city. There were many pavilions, terraces, and pavilions inside. Even the 2 copper lions in front of the residence gave off a kind of steadiness that had been passed down from generation to generation. However, at this moment, this steadiness was broken by some noisy carriages and people wearing court uniforms and military armor. These people's faces carried some nervousness and respect as they hurriedly shuttled in and out of the wide-open residence gate. Some servants wearing embroidered clothes also followed these people in and out, shouting loudly, as if they were announcing and welcoming them. Xiaohua had never liked this kind of bustle, so he simply released his soul consciousness and probed inside the Yu residence for a moment. He said to Fu Jiwen in a low voice, "The person Master is looking for is not in the residence. It seems we can only pay a visit." "Yes, Master." "Please wait here for a moment." Fu Jiwen thought for a moment and smiled. This disciple will use the name of an assassin to visit the Yu clan. I wonder who Master is looking for? Yu Zhongqian, the young master of the Yu residence. Xiaohua replied, "This child is fated with this old man. Today, I have specially come to settle the karma." This disciple understands. It seems this disciple will have another little junior brother. Fu Jiwen said with a smile as he took out the name of an assassin from his bosom. If it's fated, it should be a little junior brother and a little junior sister. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed as he replied thoughtfully. Fu Jiwen took out his name of an assassin, and very politely smiled at the servant who came to greet him. "This one is Fu Jiwen. I have specially come to pay a visit to the residence's young master, Yu Zhongqian. Please announce him." Upon hearing that Fu Jiwen had come to pay a visit to Yu Zhongqian, the servant's respectful face suddenly revealed a trace of strangeness. However, the servant didn't accept the name of an assassin, and only politely replied, "So it's young Master Fu. This one has been disrespectful. It's just that my family's young master isn't in the residence, so this one has no way of announcing. I hope young master can understand. Oh? Where did young master you go? Fu Jiwen was slightly surprised, and asked curiously. Of course, young master, you only said that he could find him in Yifeng country. The servant smiled apologetically. This one doesn't know where my family's young master went. AI, since that's the case, please bring this one's name of an assassin to Uncle Yu's table. This one will ask him personally. Fu Jiwen saw that the servant didn't intend to announce his arrival, so he could only say it himself. The servant was a bit embarrassed, and smiled apologetically. It's not that this one doesn't want to announce it to young master. Today, there is a military mission in the residence. Other than the officials in Yifeng country's imperial court, no one is allowed to announce it to young master. So that's how it is. Fu Jiwen frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, he asked again. Then, if this one wants to know where young master you went, what should I do? -13. Chapter 38-35. This? The servant hesitated and sized up Fu Jiwen again. Fu Jiwen rolled his eyes and casually touched his waist with one hand. He took out a small silver ingot and placed it in the name token. He handed it over again and smiled. This one is indeed young Master Yu's old friend. This time, I came to fulfill our previous agreement. The servant was extremely quick-witted. With a pinch of his hand and a slight curl of his finger, he stuffed the silver into his sleeve even more nimbly than Fu Jiwen. Immediately after, he smiled apologetically and said, Since young Master Fu is a close friend of my young master, then I would like to ask young Master Fu to report to the left side door. That is where the daily family affairs of the Yu residence are reported. Hee, thank you very much. Fu Jiwen kept the name token and was about to turn back when the servant hurriedly said, Oh right, young Master Fu, if you want to know about my family's young master, remember, don't say that you're my young master's close friend. Just say that you're here to settle accounts with my young master. Oh? Fu Jiwen stared blankly and asked curiously, Why is that? However, at this moment, another military horse galloped over. The person on the horse held a yellow scroll in his hand and shouted, Urgent report from the king. When the servant heard this, how could he say anything more to Fu Jiwen? He smiled apologetically at Fu Jiwen and hurriedly ran over. Fu Jiwen also knew that this was an important military matter of Yifeng country. It was inconvenient for him to delay. He also turned slightly and returned from the side of the stairs. However, when he raised his eyes to look at Xiaohua, he was stunned again. He saw that the place where Xiaohua was standing was empty. Where was Xiaohua's figure? Of course, in the blink of an eye, Xiaohua's figure reappeared on the spot, as if he had never disappeared. In an instant, Fu Jiwen understood that he had not seen wrongly, nor had his master disappeared. Instead, it was his master who had merged with all things in the world. Even a casual thought from him could not be detected by people with shallow cultivation. Master! Fu Jiwen walked in front of Xiaohua and was about to speak. Xiaohua nodded and said, Master understands. We'll go to the side door. Okay. Seeing his own master so condescending to go to the side door, Fu Jiwen felt more and more that this Yu Zhongquan was important to Xiaohua. He hurriedly agreed and walked in front. The side entrance of the Yu residence was not small. Although it did not have the copper lion to suppress evil, the tightly shut vermilion door and the neat pine and cypress trees on both sides of the vermilion door also gave off a solemn and dignified air. Fu Jiwen walked to the front of the vermilion door and lightly knocked on the brass ring. In a moment, an elderly servant poked his head out. Fu Jiwen was about to take out his name inscription, but when he thought about what the servant had said, his face turned cold, and he shouted, Is this the Yu manor? Where is Yu Zhongquan? Who is young master? Why are you looking for my young master? The old servant's expression didn't change. He opened the door slightly and asked with a smile, You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know that I'm here to settle accounts with Yu Zhongquan. Fu Jiwen decided to play along. As for what it is, you can just call Yu Zhongquan over and you'll know. Sigh, young master, please calm down, young master. The old servant didn't find it strange and hurriedly bowed. My young master is not in the residence right now. This old servant apologizes to young master on behalf of my young master. This has nothing to do with you. Fu Jiwen couldn't bear it, but he still said, You just need to tell me where Yu Zhongquan went. This old servant doesn't know where my young master went. The old servant replied fluently. If young master needs any compensation, feel free to ask. No need, Fu Jiwen said resolutely. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. This humble one will only look for Yu Zhongquan. Sigh, then please wait a moment. The old servant sighed again and closed the door. He turned around and seemed to be reporting. Fu Jiwen turned to look at Xiaohua. Xiaohua was also somewhat helpless. After all, he was here to form good karma with the Yu family. Forceful means might be effective, but Xiaohua always felt that it was disrespectful to the Yu family. He wouldn't be able to explain himself to Yu Zhongquan in the future. A moment later there was a sound from behind the vermilion door. Xiaohua's soul sense swept over and a strange expression immediately appeared on his face. Sure enough, when the vermilion door opened again, a family guard wearing embroidered clothes came out. Wasn't this one of the two family guards who escorted Yu Zhongquan back then? However, those two family guards didn't report their names from beginning to end, so Xiaohua didn't know their names. The family guard pushed open the door and looked at Fu Jiwen. He frowned and said, This young master, I don't know how my young master offended you. My young master isn't here now, so if you have anything to say, just say it. As for my young master's whereabouts, forgive me for not being able to tell you. Not waiting for Fu Jiwen to make up a story, Xiaohua's figure flashed and arrived in front of the family guard. He opened his mouth and said, It is this Xiao who came to look for Yu Zhongquan. Do you still remember this Xiao? Xiaohua's sudden appearance in front of the family guard gave him a fright. The family guard abruptly retreated, true energy actually appearing around his body. He shouted with extreme vigilance, You, who are you? En? Xiaohua smiled and looked at the family guard. He said expectantly, Could it be that you have already forgotten? When Yu Zhongquan ran away from the marriage, you, seventh uncle Yu, and another family guard went to Bronze Pillar country to chase after him. You even ran into bandits on the way. That? The family guard looked at Xiaohua up and down, somewhat puzzled. He smiled and said, This Taoist Xiao, this one doesn't know what Taoist Xiao is talking about. When did he run away from the marriage? Ah. Xiaohua's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. He said in shock, Yu Zhongquan, how many times did he run away from the marriage? AI Taoist Xiao should know. Every time my young master ran away from the marriage, he was chased back, and every time he was chased back, he would run away again after a few days. The family guard said with an extremely bitter smile. To tell the truth, this one already can't remember how many times my young master ran away from the marriage. Granny, this Yu Zhongquan, isn't he too strange? Xiaohua really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had only heard of people running away from the marriage, but he had never heard of people running away from the marriage to the end. He really didn't know if Yu Zhongquan's ambition was to be a ranger or to run away from the marriage. Seventh uncle also chased after him a few times in the beginning. The family guard sighed again. Later, seventh uncle also got old and couldn't catch up anymore. He let this one and Yu Guangwei chase after him together. But later, Guangwei died in the hands of a demon when he encountered bandits. Now only this one is left. AI, this one hasn't received any news from the young master yet, otherwise this one would have already chased after him. What? Even Fu Jiwen, who was next to him, couldn't help but exclaim. Could it be Yu Zhongquan ran away from the marriage again? While speaking, Fu Jiwen turned to look at Xiaohua, not knowing what to say. Xiaohua was even more dumbfounded. Previously, he had already thought highly of Yu Zhongquan, but he still didn't expect that. Yu Zhongquan still hadn't married that young lady from the Chang family, and was even running away from the marriage. That? Yu Zhongquan hasn't married yet. Is it still that Chang family's young lady? Xiaohua probed again. When the family guard heard Xiao Hua's question, some of his original doubts were reduced. He nodded and said, "What Taoist elder said is right. It's still that young lady. But now she has become the Chang family's young lady." Xiao Hua was quite puzzled and asked curiously, "Since Yu Zhongquan isn't willing to marry the Chang family's young lady, then why does the Yu family insist on forcing him to marry the Chang family's young lady?" "Taoist elder doesn't know." The family guard seemed to have met a confidant. He almost pulled Xiao Hua's hand and confided, "Now it's no longer up to my Yu family. Previously, my family's young master ran away before the engagement. After being chased back by 7th Uncle Yu, he got engaged to the Chang family's young lady. After the engagement, the young master ran away from home several times. The Yu family didn't want to force the young master too much, so they discussed breaking off the engagement with the Chang family. The Chang family saw that a forcefully picked melon isn't sweet, so they also wanted to break off the engagement. But although that Chang family's young lady hasn't seen my family's young master, she is willing to be loyal to one person, and won't marry anyone other than my family's young master. For so many years, Yu Zhongquan and Chang family's young lady have never seen each other?" Xiao Hua immediately felt that it was inconceivable, almost interrupting the family guard's words. "That's not it," the family guard explained. "This was what the Chang family's young lady said at the beginning. Later, my family's master thought that it might be because the young master hadn't seen the Chang family's young lady's appearance, so he refused. Later, he simply tied up the young master and brought him to see the Chang family's young lady. But even after seeing her, the young master was still unwilling. Could it be that the Chang family's young lady is vulgar?" Xiao Hua seemed to understand. "Taoist elder is wrong." The family guard shook his head and said, "The Chang family's young lady is a famous beauty in Xian country. She is proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. How could she be vulgar? Then that's strange." Xiao Hua was greatly puzzled. Fu Jiwen smiled. "Master, it said that a tortoise meets a mung bean, and their eyes match. I think these two people are not fated to be together." "Not fated to be together?" Xiao Hua frowned. From the current situation, it seemed that it was very different from what he had imagined. "How should I address you, my dear friend?" Fu Jiwen smiled. "It seems that you are also a trusted aide of the Yu family. Every time young Master Yu escapes, travels, you are the one who goes to find him." "Oh, I'm Haiming." The family guard smiled bitterly. "Of course, I grew up with young Master. But why do I have to go down to find young Master? It's not because of this. It's because my face is very thick. After young Master gets into trouble, I can help him clean up." Fu Jiwen asked curiously, "Brother Yu, what do you mean?" "Sigh, there's something young Master doesn't know." Yu Haiming explained. "My family's young master didn't just leave home to escape from marriage. He also wanted to be chivalrous. Every time he goes out, he has to do some good deeds that are either good nor bad. Every time, he tries to be clever but ends up making a fool of himself." Just as Yu Haiming said this, he heard a soft and rather dignified cough from behind him. "Haiming, who are you talking to?" Hearing this voice, Yu Haiming's face immediately turned pale. He hurriedly shut his mouth. Without turning around, he immediately shouted, "Master Yu, why did you come out from the side door?" -13. Chapter 38-36. Naturally, Xiao Hua had long sensed that someone was coming. At this time, he raised his head and saw the vermilion door open. A tall and sturdy old man about 60 years old dressed in embroidered clothes walked out from inside. Behind him were several guards with swords. Although this old man was slightly old, his spirit was very good. His ruddy face vaguely resembled Yu Zhongquan's. The old man didn't answer Yu Heming's question at all. He coldly snorted and said, "This old man is asking you. Who are you talking nonsense with? Aren't you afraid of my Yu family's family law?" "Master, please forgive me. Master misunderstood." Yu Heming hurriedly bowed and said, This is Xiao Daoist and his disciple. Back then, when this little one accompanied seventh uncle to Copper Pillar Country to find the little Gonzi, this little one remembers. Back then, this Shao Daoist even saved the little Gonzi's life. It's just that Shao Daoist didn't seem to have changed after so many years. This little one almost couldn't remember. Oh? Hearing Yu Hemming's words, the old man didn't dare to be negligent. He looked at the young Xiaohua and cupped his hands. So it's Shao Daoist. This old man will repay the kindness of Daoist for saving my son. However, this old man has some important matters to attend to in the palace. It's not good to accompany Daoist. Hemming, go find the accountant, and withdraw 1,000 taels of gold. Respectfully give it to Shao Daoist. Yes, master. Yu Hemming didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly replied. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Master Yu seems to have misunderstood the purpose of this Zhao's visit. This Master Yu didn't even tell Xiaohua his name. It seemed that he really had some urgent matters. However, the main meaning was that he didn't really believe Yu Hemming's words. Now that he heard Xiaohua speak, he couldn't help but ask with interest. Oh? If Shao Daoist didn't come for money and kindness, then why did you come? This? Xiaohua hesitated slightly. It wasn't wise to speak of his intention to take in a disciple now. However, if he didn't say it now and mentioned it later, it would give people a misconception. Xiaohua thought of the story between Yu Zhongquan and Miss Chang and said, This Xiao came to see Yu Zhongquan and see if I can take him as a disciple. Disciple? You? Are you joking? Master Yu was stunned. His pair of withered yellow eyes looked at Xiaohua up and down 3 times. Then, he looked at Yu Hemming at the side and said to Xiaohua solemnly, Daoist Xiao, if this old man didn't see that you have some skills, my loyal servant wouldn't lie in front of this old man. This old man would almost beat you out of here. Although you have the grace of saving my son's life, it is absolutely impossible for my Yu clan's descendant to join the Dao sect. Even if Quaner agrees, this old man will never agree. Taoist priests, please. All right. Xiaohua didn't drag things out. He nodded and said, Since we're not fated, then this Xiao won't force it, Hemming. When Master Yu saw Xiaohua like this, he was even more like 7th Uncle Yu that day, treating Xiaohua as a swindler. He coldly snorted and said, In the future, your pair of eyes need to be sharpened. Don't believe anyone who says it's related to Quaner. This old man told you to take care of Quaner and you just... Unfortunately, before Master Yu finished speaking, a thunderous voice shouted from afar. Yu Zhongquan, which one of you is Yu Zhongquan? Get out here for this old man. I'll, not good. When Yu Hemming heard this, his face changed slightly and he looked at Master Yu. What are you afraid of? Master Yu glared at Yu Hemming and said angrily, Quickly go and take a look. Could it be that someone is going to tear down my Yu clan? Yes. Yu Hemming hurriedly agreed and ran towards the front door of the Yu clan. Boom. Before Yu Hemming could turn around the pine tree, he heard a loud noise. Several tall and straight trees were uprooted and flew into the air. Even the square bricks and bluestones on the ground were lifted up. These broken pieces of wood and gravel were mixed with great force and smashed towards Yu Hemming. Yu Hezing was startled and hurriedly raised his hands. The true qi around his body surged as he tried to block these things. However, just as he raised his hands, the gravel in front of him flew over. The true qi around Yu Hezing's body was immediately shattered by these gravel. Yu Hezing turned pale with fright. He quickly leaped to dodge, but at this moment, not to mention the gravel covering his entire body, even the area around him was covered by the gravel. How dare you! Hearing old Master Yu's angry roar, the guards behind him followed his order and flew up, each of them urging their true qi to save Mingyu. Unfortunately, they were too far away from Yu Hemming. How could they make it in time? Rather than saying that they wanted to save Yu Hemming, it was better to say that they were blocking in front of Master Yu to block the broken pieces of wood for him. Seeing that several guards had passed by him, the broken pieces of wood and gravel had already landed in front of Yu Hemming. Master Yu was shocked. He didn't expect that the intruder's strength would be so strong. Moreover, he was ruthless and didn't show any mercy. However, it was too late for him to make a move now. Master Yu raised his hand and put it down again, watching coldly. Pa pa pa. A loud rumbling sound came from where Yu Hemming was. All the broken pieces of wood and gravel that landed on Yu Hemming's body were blocked by an invisible barrier and fell to the ground. Yu Hemming, who had already given up on resisting, naturally used his hands to protect his chest in vain. His head was tucked into his chest. At this time, he was stunned as he watched the broken pieces of wood that were enough to kill him slowly fall to the ground. His eyes flashed with disbelief. Yu Hemming was safe and sound. On the other hand, the guards who rushed out to block in front of Master Yu were barely able to resist under the pressure of the broken pieces of wood. 2 of them even had their arms injured. Jie Jie Yi Yun. A thunderous voice came unexpectedly from not far away. I didn't expect that after not seeing you for a few years, your cultivation has become so profound. Following this voice, a man who was even more burly than Yu Yun in armor flew out from behind the pine and cypress trees. In this burly man's hand, he was holding a servant of the Yu residence. Go, you tight-lipped dog slave! The burly man flew closer and shook his hand. He shouted, Kowtow to your master! The servant flew towards Yu Yun even more ferociously than the broken pieces of wood from before. A powerful force enveloped Yu Yun before the servant landed. Hiss! Yu Yun sucked in a breath of cold air, and his eyes flashed. He didn't dare to stay in the same spot any longer. Instead, he flew forward slightly and raised his hands. The noble chi surging around him formed an oval shape in front of him. Pooh! The servant landed on the noble spirit, and his body slowly floated down. Yu Yun's solemn expression had just relaxed when the noble spirit that Yu Yun had activated suddenly produced an explosive force. With a loud boom, Yu Yun's body was sent flying back a few feet. The servant who had originally landed and the few guards who had blocked the broken pieces of wood were also sent flying by this explosive force. Ha ha ha, old man Yu, it seems like you haven't changed much from before. You've been living like a dog all these years. With a loud laugh, the burly man landed from midair and the entire ground shook slightly. Looking at the burly man in armor in front of him, Yu Yun sneered. Sima Minghong, are you here to find someone or to provoke me? Are you representing the Sima family or yourself? Yu Zhongquan is the legitimate son of your Yu family, right? Sima Minghong looked at Yu Yun and asked indifferently. Yes, he is my son. Yu Yun nodded and replied sarcastically. Could it be that brother Sima has a dispute with my son? Humph, not to mention your son, even you, what qualifications do you have to fight with me? Sima Minghong snorted arrogantly. Sima Mingguang has the qualifications to say this, but you don't. Yu Yun's expression didn't change as he retorted sarcastically. Hee hee, don't worry. If you can't uphold justice for my Sima family, I'm afraid that my patriarch will say this to you face to face. But when that time comes, you should know the result. Sima Minghong wasn't angry. He waved his hand and said, Yanner, quickly come over and tell your story to the patriarch of the Yu family. He will definitely uphold justice for you. It was only at this moment that a frail-looking scholar walked over from the end of the pine and cypress tree. Not only was this scholar young, but his face was also pale. Although the brocade robe on his body was bright, his left sleeve was fluttering in the wind. It was obvious that he didn't have a left arm. Junior Sima Yen greets Uncle Yu. The scholar walked in front of Yu Yun, bowed with difficulty and said, Junior's matter requires Uncle Yu to uphold justice. Seeing Sima Yen like this, how could Yu Yun not know why he was here? Yu Yun's mouth was filled with bitterness. He raised his hand and said, Nephew Sima, please rise. May I know when you met my son and how did you get into a dispute with him? Dispute? Sima Minghong sneered. My Sima family doesn't dare to have a dispute with the Yu family's son. My Yanner couldn't cultivate since he was young and could only read books. It can be said that he doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Your son relied on his cultivation and knew some bullshit swordsmanship to bully the weak. Facing such a weak and defenseless scholar, he actually dared to attack him. Old man Yu, if you don't uphold justice for my Yu family today, do you believe that I won't tear your Yu family apart from the outside? Sima Minghong. Yu Yun sneered and said, although this old man's son is unfilial and has many shortcomings, this old man knows that he has always been reasonable and abhors evil. If it isn't something that he can't stand, he absolutely won't act. This matter can't be just based on nephew Sima's side of the story. What do you mean by he didn't like? What he didn't like was something that he should attack. Sima Minghong sneered. Not to mention that there are officials and laws in this world, there are also Confucian laws. Even if there weren't any, he shouldn't have attacked a weak child. Sima Minghong kept mentioning laws and saying that Yu Yun didn't have the strength to truss a chicken. These words made Yu Yun's mouth extremely bitter. -13. Chapter 38-37. Uncle, please uphold justice for your nephew. At this moment, Sima Yan took the opportunity to speak. He knelt on the ground and said, a few days ago, your nephew brought a group of guards to the outskirts for a walk. We met a few villagers who bumped into your nephew's carriage and dirtied your nephew's brocade robe. Your nephew didn't want to escalate the matter and only wanted to ask for 1 or 2 copper coins to teach them a lesson. But at this moment, your noble son descended from the sky. Not only did he disperse the guards who were protecting your nephew indiscriminately, he even cut off your nephew's left arm. He kept saying that he wanted to get rid of violence and bring peace to the people. Uncle, this little nephew only wanted to teach the villagers some etiquette and some lessons. How did it become cruel? Nephew, please get up. Yu Yun's face was a little green as he raised his hand and said, it does sound like this old man's son is in the wrong. However, this old man has already said that what nephew said is only the opinion of one person. This old man still wants to ask my son. If it is really his fault, this old man will definitely cut off his left arm as an apology for you. Thank you, uncle. Sima Yan stood up, trembling. He looked very weak. Yu Yun looked at Sima Yan's left arm and bit his lip. He understood that if an ordinary disciple's arm was cut off, it might not be able to be reborn. But how could a disciple of a scholarly family be cut off just like that? Since the Sima family didn't want to reattach Sima Yan's arm, they naturally had other plans. Quickly call Yu Zhongquan out! Sima Minghong shouted. I want to see what kind of guts he ate to actually dare to hurt my Sima family disciple. Sigh, my son isn't at home. Yu Yun sighed. I didn't teach my son well and couldn't discipline him. These days, he has been wandering outside. Even I don't know where he went. Hee. Sima Minghong looked straight at Yu Yun and sneered. Old man, you don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. I won't hide it from you. My clan head was furious when he heard about this. If it weren't for my persuasion, he would have come personally. My Sima clan is a scholarly clan. When have we ever suffered such a loss? This old man came here today to try peaceful means before resorting to force. If the Yu clan doesn't give me an explanation, not only will this old man not leave easily, the development of the situation in the future will definitely be out of my control. The threat in Sima Minghong's words was very obvious, not to mention that he was staring at Yu Yun like a sharp sword. Yu Yun narrowed his eyes and replied indifferently. My Yu family has been spreading its influence in Yifeng Nation for more than a year or 2. What kind of scenery have we not seen? Although my Yu clan can't be compared to your Sima clan, if you want to take away my son with just a few words, Sima Minghong, you're thinking too simply. Simple or not, this old man doesn't know. Sima Minghong waved his hand again. A crane rushed into the air and disappeared in an instant. He then smiled and said, This old man only knows that it's fine if you don't hand over Yu Zhongquan today, but you have to give my Sima clan an explanation. My Sima clan disciple's arm can't be chopped off for nothing. What kind of explanation do you want? Yu Yun asked thoughtfully. Sima Minghong took out an envelope from his chest. With a flick of his finger, the envelope fell in front of Yu Yun and said, This is a letter from my clan head. You'll know once you read it. Yu Yun took the envelope and slowly opened it. When his gaze fell on it, his eyes flashed with anger. He raised his head and said coldly, Impossible! This old man can't agree to this kind of condition. Boom! Just as Yu Yun opened his mouth, the envelope in his hand spontaneously combusted and instantly turned into ashes. Since you can't agree. Sima Minghong wasn't surprised by Yu Yun's reaction. He smiled and said, Then don't blame my Sima clan for not giving your Yu clan face. Generals, listen up, yes. It was at this moment that several cultivators who were wearing the same armor as Sima Minghong flew over from out of nowhere. When they heard Sima Minghong's order, they all replied in unison. Sima Minghong! Yu Yun said angrily. You are trying to start a war between our two clans. This old man can't bear this crime. Sima Minghong laughed. Since you can't hand over Yu Zhongquan, then this old man can only order the generals to go to your Yu clan and capture him. Your Sima clan's disciple barged into my Yu clan like this. Isn't this a slap to my Yu clan's face? Isn't this provoking a war between our two clans? Yu Yun said angrily. Sima Minghong retorted. That's right. Since you know that this old man's actions are a slap to your face, then Yu Zhongquan chopped off my Sima clan's disciple's arm. Isn't that a slap to my Sima clan's face? The one at fault is your Yu clan. Quaner is indeed not at home. Otherwise, why wouldn't this old man let him out to confront me? Yu Yun suppressed his anger and said helplessly. If he's really not at home. Sima Minghong thought for a moment and said, Old man, you, make an oath and tell me where Yu Zhongquan went. This old man will give you face today. Otherwise. As soon as Sima Minghong said this, Yu Yun's face flushed red. Not to mention that he was forced to swear an oath in front of his own house. Even if he revealed Yu Zhongquan's whereabouts, he wouldn't be able to face the Yu family. However, if he didn't do this, then the Sima clan's people would barge into the Yu residence. The ones who would lose face would also be him and the Yu residents. Sima Minghong was forcing him step by step. He didn't plan to let today's matter end well. Otherwise what? Yu Yun asked coldly. Haha, what else can we do? Sima Minghong finally revealed his sharp teeth. Otherwise. Before Qi Zhanghua's army conquers Yifeng country, my Sima clan will take the head of the Grand Minister of Yifeng country first. How dare you? Yu Yun's body trembled, and a sharp aura emitted from his body. He left the residence from the side door and headed to the palace to discuss with the Emperor of Yifeng country about how to deal with Qi Zhanghua's army. The Grand Minister of Yifeng country was Yu Yun's eldest son, Yu Zhongli. Now, the Yu residence's soldiers and message delivery were also discussing the battle report from the front line. Old man Yu, this matter is no longer up to you, Sima Minghong said coldly. It was your Yu clan who provoked us first and offended the dignity of my Sima clan. My Yu clan is already very merciful by not sending troops directly. At this moment, there were naturally soldiers flying out from the Yu residence. Their murderous aura wasn't inferior to the cultivators brought by Sima Minghong. However, Yu Yun understood that if it was a normal situation, he could fight with Sima Minghong. But now, he definitely couldn't let the Yu clan get worse. Unfilial son. Thinking of Yu Zhongquan, Yu Yun's eyes were filled with anger. At the same time, a heavy sense of powerlessness surged from the bottom of his heart. Just as Yu Yun was thinking about whether to compromise, he heard a clear voice in the distance. Who is looking for my husband? Ever since Sima Minghong appeared, Xiaohua and Fu Jiwen hid at the side and watched everything that was happening in front of them with interest. At this moment, when he heard someone speak, he had already released his soul consciousness. However, when he saw the person clearly, he frowned. He saw a woman wearing ordinary clothes flying over on clouds. This woman was short, and her body was slightly plump. Her face was like a full moon, revealing a kind of luxurious appearance. She was completely different from the ghost Huang Yi that Xiaohua saw in the Huang clan of Tianmen Mountain. Husband? Sima Minghong looked at this woman who was only in the scholar realm. Disdain appeared on his face as he waved his hand and said, You are that shameless woman from the Chang clan who only wants to marry Yu Zhongquan, right? This old man really doesn't understand why Chang Honglai is so indulgent with you. If it was this old man, I'm afraid that I would have already slapped you to death. Junior Chang Yuan greets Senior. The woman landed on the field and respectfully bowed to Sima Minghong. She replied neither arrogantly nor humbly. Fortunately, this junior's surname is Chang and not Sima. My father had a great scholar teach this junior about filial piety. Since young, this junior has known the principle of being filial to one's parents. Since this junior has already been betrothed to Yu Zhongquan, then this junior is Yu Zhongquan's wife. Even if my husband doesn't want this junior still has to keep my chastity for my husband. If this becomes the Sima clan shameless, then this junior doesn't know what the Sima clan's so-called fickle woman is called in the Sima clan. You! Sima Minghong's face was slightly red and he was rather embarrassed. Sima Yan's eyes lit up and he said frivolously, So this is the Chang clan's young lady. This junior has long heard of you. Now that I see you, you really live up to your reputation. Although Yu Zhongquan is your husband in name, you two are not husband and wife in reality. Moreover, Yu Zhongquan is already a grasshopper after autumn. Not many people can survive. This junior advises you to make early plans. It is my fortune to be able to marry someone with such great ambitions like you Lang. Even if I have to die with my husband, it will be worth it. Chang Yuan looked at Sima Yan with disdain and sneered. It's still better than someone who got his arm chopped off by a woman and lived an ignoble life. Chang Yuan's words immediately pointed out the question that Yu Yun couldn't ask and even exposed Sima Yan's scars. Sima Yan's face was filled with shame and anger. Shut up! Sima Minghong scolded Sima Yan and asked Chang Yuan. Chang clan's young lady, did you come here on your own or on behalf of Xian country's Chang clan? This junior naturally came here on my own. This has nothing to do with my Chang clan or Xian country. Chang Yuan replied faintly. Moreover, this junior is clear about Senior's intentions. Since my husband isn't here, if Senior has any problems, please come to this junior. You! Sima Minghong was really caught off guard. He really didn't expect Chang Yuan to come. He also didn't expect Chang Yuan to stand up for Yu Zhongquan. Chang Yuan was right. Although Chang Yuan and Yu Zhongquan weren't married and Yu Zhongquan had been running away from the marriage, they were still engaged. Chang Yuan could replace Yu Zhongquan's matters. -13. Chapter 38-38. Yuaner. Yu Yun was truly moved. Chang Yuan's appearance instantly pulled the Yu family out of an extremely awkward situation and blocked the Sima family's meticulous plans. He opened his mouth and said, You don't have to, father. Chang Yuan's face was slightly red, as if it was the first time she had been called that. This is a matter between the boy and my husband. You don't have to worry about it. All right, Sima Yan laughed nastily and said, Since you're willing to stand up for Yu Zhongquan, then I'll take one of your arms today. If you're willing, shut up. Without waiting for Sima Yan to finish speaking, Sima Minghong berated again. If it was Yu Zhongquan, this old man would naturally take one of his arms first, and then send it to my Sima family. However, since you're Yu Zhongquan's wife and a disciple of the Chang family, you can keep this arm first and wait until we return to the Sima family. It doesn't matter. Chang Yuan replied indifferently. I'm Yu Zhongquan's wife now. It has nothing to do with my Chang family. Hearing this, everyone understood that the Chang family definitely didn't want to offend the Sima family. All of this was done by Chang Yuan on her own initiative. Father! At this moment, a man wearing an official's robe who looked similar to Yu Zhongquan rushed out from the side door. He held a blood-stained tiger tally in his hand and said anxiously, Donglin country has already sent out their troops. Their grand tutor has brought a group of disciples and is approaching the capital city. Hearing this, Yun's face became anxious. His gaze fell on Chang Yuan and he said in a low voice, This is urgent. Yuaner, I'll have to trouble you for now, let's go. Sima Minghong saw that the situation was hopeless and that the Sima family couldn't get any benefits from Yifeng country for the time being. He laughed coldly and reached out to grab Chang Yuan. Wait! Right at this moment, even though it sounded indifferent, It was filled with boundless majesty in the hearts of everyone present. Sima Minghong was slightly startled, and he looked towards the source of the voice with great vigilance, only to see a tall and skinny Dao sect cultivator slowly walking over. Wasn't that Xiao Hua, who had been watching the show from the side? Sima Minghong frowned, and his eyes flashed with confusion. When he arrived in front of the Yu mansion, he had already seen the surrounding situation clearly. Xiao Hua and Fu Jiwen were quietly standing not far away. Although it looked very abrupt, Sima Minghong's divine sense swept over them, and even the clear eyes technique didn't find anything special about Xiao Hua. Only Fu Jiwen's body emitted a faint Jinqi aura, and this aura didn't attract Sima Minghong's attention. In particular, Sima Minghong closed in step by step. Although the Yu clan's patriarch, Yu Yun, kept defending himself, Yu Yun didn't even look at Fu Jiwen who was beside him. Fu Jiwen also didn't have any reaction. He even looked like he was watching a show. Sima Minghong already knew that these two people had nothing to do with the Yu clan. Moreover, if Fu Jiwen wasn't beside him, Sima Minghong would have even thought that Xiao Hua was a wandering Taoist. However, who would have thought that at such a crucial moment, when the Yu clan gave up and the Sima clan was about to succeed, this Taoist that was almost ignored by Sima Minghong actually spoke up. Moreover, the moment he stood up, the aura around him seemed to cover up everything in the Sima clan. How could Sima Minghong not know that he was in trouble? Fellow Taoist! Sima Minghong hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "May I know why fellow Taoist spoke up?" Who would have thought that Xiao Hua would completely ignore him? Instead, he walked in front of Chan Yuan, looked into her eyes, and asked kindly, "Chan Yuan? Do you know this old man? Say, senior?" Chan Yuan naturally felt the mountain-like pressure coming from Xiao Hua's body. At the same time, she also felt the mountain-like kindness in Xiao Hua's voice. However, she looked at Xiao Hua, shook her head slightly and said, "Junior doesn't know senior." "Then, do you know Huani?" Xiao Hua asked again. "Huani?" Chan Yuan frowned even more. After thinking for a moment, she shook her head again. "Junior also doesn't know him." Disappointment appeared on Xiao Hua's face. "Cough, cough, fellow Taoist." Sima Minghong coughed a few times and wanted to speak again. Xiao Hua sneered. His gaze swept over and he said indifferently, "Those who use their strength to bully the weak are not worthy of being Xiao Hua's fellow Taoist." You! Sima Minghong's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand but put it down again. Now that he had already taken the initiative in the Yu clan's Yifeng country, he definitely wouldn't spoil the initiative because of a trace of anger. Yu Zhongli and Yu Yun also stood there, not daring to move. They had a feeling that Xiao Hua's appearance was definitely not a bad thing for the Yu clan. Yu Yun even glanced at Yu Hemming, who was standing there stupidly. "Could it be that you really can't remember?" Xiao Hua once again looked kindly at Chan Yuan. "Huani, little cabbage, Tianmen Mountain." "Senior," Chan Yuan's face was slightly red. She said in a low voice, "Junior indeed doesn't know what Senior is talking about." Xiao Hua slightly closed his eyes. His heart was rather unwilling. After thinking for a bit, he slowly raised his hand as if he was holding on to something extremely heavy. There were even invisible soul threads wrapped around his finger. As Xiao Hua's finger pointed, it landed between Chan Yuan's eyebrows. Chan Yuan only felt her vision go dark. The stars and the sun in the sky all turned into flowing light and rushed into Xiao Hua's finger. She was also sucked into it. Immediately after, the beautiful and tragic scene of that night on Tianmen Mountain floated before her eyes. Time passed for a very long time, yet it also seemed to pass for a very short time. When the sun suddenly appeared, Chan Yuan once again saw Xiao Hua standing in front of her, alive and well. As for the ferocious Sima Minghong, his face still carried the anger from before. Chan Yuan felt that her face was slightly cold. She used her hand to wipe it away. Her face was already filled with tears. Do you remember what happened?" Looking at Chan Yuan's tear-streaked face, Xiao Hua asked again. "Senior's story is very tragic and beautiful. The fate of Huang Yi and Yu Zhongquan also made this junior sigh. Chang Yuan still shook her head. But this junior is Chang Yuan, not Huang Yi. Alas, forget it. Xiaohua sighed. Human strength is sometimes limited. This Xiao can't cover the sky with one hand. Thank you, senior. Chang Yuan bowed slightly. Do you need this old man to take action? Xiaohua looked around and asked softly. Chang Yuan shook her head. There's no need to trouble senior. Huang Yi can turn into a cabbage and live an ignoble life for Yu Zhongquan. Why can't Chang Yuan die with Yu Zhongquan? Senior has nothing to do with this junior. How can this junior let senior take risks? While speaking, Chang Yuan's eyes flickered. She hurriedly bowed to Xiaohua again. Wait! Suddenly, Xiaohua's body shook. He hurriedly said, You, open your eyes and let this old man take a closer look. This? Chang Yuan was somewhat embarrassed. This old man is old enough to be your grandfather, Xiaohua said with a smile. If this old man's guess is correct, you must be the person this old man is looking for. Okay. Chang Yuan bit her lips. She opened her eyes and looked straight at Xiaohua. Hiss, as expected. Xiaohua stared at Chang Yuan's pitch-black pupils and carefully examined the details inside. His impression of Huang Yi's appearance was basically from Huang Mingxiang's, but he had an extremely deep impression of the soul condensed into eyes. Huang Yi's ghost cultivation divine ability was called Seven Eyes Beautiful Fire. Her eyes contained an extremely powerful ghost fire. These eyes were exactly the same as her eyes when she was alive. They were completely different from Huang Mingxiang's eyes on Tianmen Mountain. But the strange thing was that the soul's eyes that Xiaohua had a deep impression of were exactly the same as Chang Yuan's in every detail. Say, senior! Chang Yuan had never looked straight at a man for such a long time. She said somewhat shyly. Junior, Chang Yuan! Xiaohua said with a smile. The so-called eyes are the god of the heart, and the heart is the master of the soul. If a person falls into the cycle of reincarnation, everything in the past will be counted as the past, and everything in this life will be reborn. However, although reincarnation can erase the appearance of the soul, it can't erase the soul's core. Although you can't remember your past life, and it's different from your past life. But your soul, your heart, and your eyes haven't changed. You are the person this old man is looking for. Ah? A trace of surprise and excitement appeared on Chang Yuan's face. But Junior, you don't need to remember who you were in the past. Moreover, this old man will make you forget. Xiaohua raised his hand and lightly tapped between Chang Yuan's eyebrows. He said with a smile, You only need to know that from today onwards, you are this old man's disciple. Even if the Yu clan can't make a decision for you, even if the Chang clan doesn't want to stand up for you, with this old man here, not to mention Sima Minghong, even if the entire Sima clan comes, this old man will definitely not let you suffer the slightest grievance. Say, senior. Chang Yuan's heart gave birth to incomparable trust in Xiaohua. But suddenly asking her to become his disciple really made it difficult for her. Junior is a Confucian cultivator, not a Tao cultivator. Junior sister. Fujiwen, who had been standing respectfully at the side, said with a smile. Not only is Master's Tao cultivation unfathomable, his Confucian cultivation is also as vast as the sea. I have only been Master's disciple for 12 years, and I have already reached the stage of Qi refinement and soul return. What are you still hesitating for? While speaking, Fujiwen opened his mouth and a mouthful of true Qi rushed into the sky, causing countless noble Qi to fall down with a loud bang. Fujiwen's heavenly book was indeed sealed by Xiaohua, but the true Qi in his chest was not fake. Although he did not reach the stage of Qi refinement and soul return, he still had the late stage of Qi refinement. At the side, Sima Minghong and Yu Yun's expressions changed. Sima Minghong even reached out and grabbed a scroll in his bosom. Master also wants to take Yu Zhongquan as his disciple. The two of you can be under this Xiao's tutelage. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing for eternity? Xiaohua said with a smile. But, Chang Yuan asked again. Junior still doesn't know Senior's name. This old man is the Dao Sex Xiaohua. Xiaohua replied amiably. Although Xiaohua's voice was soft, in the eyes of others, it was no different from a bolt from the blue. What? You are Black Wind Mountain's Xiaohua Taoist Master Xiao? Sima Minghong almost could not suppress his cry of surprise. At the same time, he suddenly thought of the attack that was blocked when he was showing his might. What? Do I not look like it? Xiaohua slightly frowned. He raised his eyes to look at Sima Minghong, who he did not know before. He did not understand why everyone was so surprised. -13. Chapter 38-39. You're the one who broke the Immortal Palace's inescapable net formation at Black Wind Ridge, swallowed 100,000 heavenly soldiers in one gulp, defeated the giant spirit Immortal General with one strike, and forced perfected Lord Qingyuan to return to the Immortal Palace. Taoist Xiaohua? Admiration appeared in Chang Yuan's eyes, and she almost stuttered as she asked. What are you talking about? Xiaohua touched his nose, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He knew that this was false information spread by Taoist Master Qing Su, but he couldn't refute it, so he thought for a moment, then asked with a smile. What? Wasn't this old man a little too vicious and evil? Do you still dare to take me as your master? Why wouldn't I dare? When she didn't know that Xiaohua was the Immortal Palace's enemy, Chang Yuan was still somewhat hesitant, but now, Chang Yuan actually stiffened her neck and said, When Disciple came to Yifeng country, Disciple first sent a message to Chang family, but Chang family really hurt Disciple's heart. You family, Disciple didn't dare to say anything, but Disciple felt that if Yu Lang was here, he might end up like Disciple. In the eyes of aristocratic families, the life and death of an individual can never compare to the prosperity of the family. Master dared to challenge the Immortal Palace, so your name has already spread throughout the hidden Immortal realm. It's Disciple's honor to be able to take you as my master. At this point, Chang Yuan's face, which had always been strong, became somewhat distressed. If Disciple doesn't take you as my master, the outcome will be death, but if Disciple takes you as my master, the worst outcome will also be death. Moreover, if Disciple takes you as my master, Disciple can still meet Yu Lang, then why wouldn't Disciple take you as my master? Immediately, Chang Yuan bowed and said, Disciple Chang Yuan greets Master. After Chang Yuan kowtowed 9 times, Xiaohua helped her up with a smile and said, Kowtowing 9 times means you're my disciple, and I'll bear all your karma. Yes, Master. Chang Yuan nodded and obediently stood beside Fu Jiwen. Hee, congratulations, Master, congratulations, little junior sister. Fu Jiwen congratulated with a smile, not putting the dozen or so disciples of the Sima family in his eyes at all. Sima Minghong's face was green and red, and he was extremely embarrassed. He wanted to reprimand Xiaohua, but he didn't dare. After all, the cultivator in front of him was a fiend who ate 100,000 heavenly soldiers. Such a fearsome reputation. Even the entire Sima family would not dare to provoke him. However, Sima Minghong, who represented the Sima family, had no choice but to speak up. He gritted his teeth and said, Taoist Master Xiao, since you want to take Miss Chang as your disciple, then she and my Sima family are. Naturally, I will take care of these trivial matters. Xiaohua looked up at Sima Minghong and said coldly, Since you asked about this matter, this old man will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Oh? Sima Minghong was slightly stunned. He didn't really understand what Xiaohua meant. Swoosh! At this moment, the entire sky seemed to have darkened. Sima Minghong felt as if his limbs were unable to move. The true energy in his body instantly froze. The entire entrance of the Yu mansion was dead silent. This. Sima Minghong's forehead was covered with sweat. He was extremely shocked. What kind of divine ability is this? Could it be? Just when Sima Minghong was trembling with fear and was afraid that Xiaohua would kill him to silence him, a familiar voice clearly entered his ears. My name is Sima Yen. That day, when I was passing by Qinghong town, I happened to see a beautiful young lady resting under the shade of a tree with an old man accompanying her. That young lady was very beautiful and I liked her very much. At that time, it was noon and there were no passers-by around. I let a group of guards surround the tree and prepared to have some fun. But at this time, Yu Zhongquan flew over in the sky and wanted to save the young lady. The guards couldn't beat Yu Zhongquan, and my left arm was also cut off by him. Sima Minghong raised his head in horror. He saw Sima Yan walking in front of everyone with his eyes wide open. There was no expression on his face as he spoke word by word. Not only did he speak about the day when Yu Zhongquan saw injustice on the road, he also spoke about the plans of the Sima family. At the end, Xiao Hua glanced at Sima Minghong, who was sweating profusely, and said, Sima Yan, apart from the dispute between you and Yu Zhongquan that day, have you ever ruined the chastity of other women? Have you been stained with the blood of other people? Yes, last year in Jianghai town. Sima Yan was like a well-behaved child as he spoke about his scandals one by one. It seemed that he didn't know shame. Xiao Hua only heard a few things and his face was already filled with anger. He waved his hand and said, Enough. Yes. Sima Yan obediently listened. Xiao Hua looked at Sima Minghong and said coldly, Sima Minghong, this is your Sima family's disciple? He is really brave. Sima Yan really deserves to die. Sima Minghong suddenly felt that the sky was bright, and he could move again. He hurriedly said, This one will take him back to the family, and ask the family head to punish him. My Sima family wrongly blamed the Yu family and will definitely come to apologize in the future. I. Sima Yan looked at everyone and listened to Sima Minghong's words. His face was pale as if he thought of something. He said a few words but didn't know what to say. Ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed and said, You killed 3 people and defiled several women. When you return to your Sima family, you will only be punished. Your Sima family's rules are also very good. It's a pity that you met this old man. Since this old man dared to take Yu Zhongquan as a disciple, of course I value his righteous conduct. If he can enforce justice on behalf of the heavens, why can't this old man do the same? Spiritual Master Xiao. Sima Minghong was shocked and wanted to say something, but he saw a red spot appear on Sima Yan's forehead. This red spot instantly spread to his entire face. Io. Sima Yan anxiously shouted and reached out to scratch his face. It was as if it was extremely itchy, but when his hand touched his face, a piece of flesh fell from his face. At the same time, the red spot spread to his hand and neck. Hee. Sima Yan was in pain and itchy. He couldn't help but scratch. After a while, his throat couldn't make any sound. His entire body curled up on the ground, barking like a dog and gasping for breath. Seeing this kind of miserable situation, even Chan Yuan, who had just heard Sima Yan's confession, couldn't help but close her eyes and not dare to look. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua lightly said, This is this old man's answer to your Sima family. You can leave now. Chan Yuan opened her eyes and only saw a few bones on the ground slowly disappearing in a pool of blood. Where was Sima Yan's corpse? Good. Sima Minghong clenched his teeth and said, I will remember Spiritual Master Zhao's words. I will report this matter to my family's patriarch. And take advantage of this old man's good mood and leave quickly. Xiao Hua waved his sleeves and said, You can find this old man to take revenge, but don't involve others. If this old man finds out that your Sima family is doing something else, don't blame this old man for being ruthless. I don't know if your Sima family's disciples can even fill the gap between this old man's teeth. Leave. Sima Minghong still wanted to say something, but when he saw Xiao Hua sticking out his tongue and licking his lips, he was really afraid. Xiao Hua's methods were unpredictable. Although he had an extremely powerful scroll in his arms, in the end, he didn't dare to take it out to test it. Seeing that Sima Minghong left with a dozen cultivators, Yu Yun and Yu Zhongli retracted their gazes from the sky. The two of them looked at each other and bowed at the same time. Junior thanks Spiritual Master Xiao for your help. No need. Xiao Hua ignored the two of them and said indifferently. This Shao has no fate with you. You don't have to thank me. Your enemy has already forced you to the city. If you can't defeat the enemy, I'm afraid that the enemy will be even more ferocious than the Sima family. Speaking up to here, Xiaohua hesitated and said, however, this old man sees that the enemy is at the initial stage of a scholar. If you can't find enough help to resist, I'm afraid. Speaking up to here, Yu Yun's expression changed greatly and he exclaimed, Murong Hanping? He actually personally went out to fight. Impossible, right? Yu Zhongli said anxiously. Murong Hanping is the state preceptor of Donglin Kingdom. My Yifeng Kingdom doesn't have a state preceptor. How could he? Xiaohua didn't care about Yu Yun and Yu Zhongli's surprise. He waved his hand and said, let's go, Chang Yuan. This matter has nothing to do with us anymore. Master will take you to find Yu Zhongquan. But Master... Chang Yuan looked at Yu Yun and Yu Zhongquan's ashen faces and couldn't bear it. She also understood Murong Hanping's power and said in a low voice, Yifeng Kingdom is Yu Lang's home. If his home is invaded by Donglin Kingdom, what will he think? Moreover, if Master doesn't help, even if my Chang family sends troops over to help, the Yu family won't be able to avoid the misfortune of being annihilated. How will Master tell Yu Lang? Senior Immortal, save us! Senior Immortal, save us! Yu Yun and Yu Zhongquan were still hesitating. Yu Hemming, who saw that the situation wasn't right, immediately rushed over and knelt in front of Xiaohua shouting, This lowly one deserves to die. This lowly one actually didn't recognize Senior Immortal's appearance before. This lowly one really didn't expect that after so many years, your appearance hasn't changed at all. Back then, young master and you had never met, yet you were able to save him from the hands of bandits. Even 7th Uncle Yu, who disliked Taoists very much, often talked about Senior Immortal's appearance after he left. Although 7th Uncle Yu isn't here anymore and my young master isn't in the residence, this lowly one is still here. This lowly one kowtows to Senior Immortal and pleads Senior Immortal to save my Yu residence and the people of my Yifeng Kingdom. This lowly one is willing. Yu Hemming was willing for a moment but couldn't think of what he should say. In the end, he could only forcefully kowtow to the ground. Blood flowed from his forehead as he said, Senior Immortal has the world in your heart. You definitely can't bear to let the flames of war spread throughout Yifeng Kingdom. Senior Immortal, please be merciful. Yu Hemming was indeed anxious. He even praised the eminent monks of the Buddhist sect. However, seeing Yu Hemming like this, other than Yu Yun and Yu Zhongli, the other Yu family guards also knelt on the ground. After all, Murong Hanping's power was well known in several countries. -13. Chapter 38-40. Yu Zhongli bit his lip and looked at his hesitant father, then looked at the noisy army in the distance. Steeling his heart, he lifted his official robe and knelt on the ground, solemnly saying, Junior Yu Zhongli greets Taoist Xiao. Junior will now go to battle against Murong Hanping. Junior does not dare to ask Senior to save Yifeng country, but after Junior leaves, the Yu family will belong to Yu Zhongquan. Senior, please consider your relationship with Zhongquan. Please extend your hand and save my Yu family. Looking at his own son kneeling down, Yu Yun's heart wasn't filled with grief, but with deep regret and self-blame. Previously, Xiaohua had said very clearly that he wanted to accept his son as his disciple, but he had mercilessly refused and even said ruthless words. But now, at this critical moment, how could he still plead with him? If he had formed good karma before, he wouldn't need to say anything now. Old ancestor. At this moment, a slightly immature voice sounded in the distance. A boy in an imperial robe, surrounded by a group of palace maids, came over in a dragon carriage. Along with this voice, another tyrannical divine sense swept over from outside Yifeng country's capital. This divine sense Yu Yun was very familiar with. Wasn't this the state preceptor of Donglin country, Murong Hanping? Yu Yun knew very well that back then, when Donglin nation invaded Xian nation, it was because of Yu Zhongquan and Chan Yuan's marriage alliance that Yifeng nation and Xian nation joined forces. Furthermore, with the help of Confucian cultivators who were familiar with the Chang family, Xian nation was able to escape a calamity. Now that Donglin country invaded again, because of Yu Zhongquan, Xian country couldn't send troops for the time being. Moreover, the situation in Yu province was delicate. Many Confucian cultivators couldn't act independently, and Yu family couldn't find suitable help to resist Murong Hanping. Yu Yun had always hoped that Donglin country would follow the old rules of hidden immortal continent. As long as a country didn't have a state preceptor, the state preceptor wouldn't go to war first. But he never expected that Murong Hanping would come personally. Since Murong Hanping came, Yifeng country was finished. Father! Just as Yu Yun was thinking, Yu Zhongli stood up and said, "The monarch is here." Boy, immediately face the enemy, Taoist Master Xiao, it's all Junior's fault for being blind. Yu Yun knew that it would be extremely difficult for Yu Zhongli to return from this trip. He hurriedly looked at Xiao Hua and said a few words. He gritted his teeth and was about to kneel on the ground. However, Xiao Hua frowned and raised his hand, stopping Yu Yun. He said, "You are Yu Zhongquan's father. There is no need to be so courteous. See." Xiao Hua's words were like a bright sun in the dark night, instantly awakening Yu Yun's despairing heart. He sucked in a breath of cold air and hurriedly bowed. Junior's eyes were poor. Previously I wronged the Taoist. Now Junior earnestly requests Senior to accept my son as a disciple. My Yu family also regards the Taoist as a master. At the side, Fu Jiwen naturally knew what his master was thinking. He was afraid that Xiao Hua would be put on the spot, so he hurriedly said with a smile, "Master, Uncle Yu loves his son dearly. Previously it was indeed somewhat inappropriate for us to rashly visit. Now, for the sake of Junior sister's face, please forgive them." And Xiao Hua nodded and waved his hand. "Get up! This old man is willing to accept Yu Zhongquan as a disciple, but I don't want to accept the entire Yu family." "Yes, yes." Yu Yun was overjoyed and hurriedly nodded. "Junior understands, Junior understands." Xiao Hua looked at the dragon carriage that stopped in the distance and frowned again. Now that this old man has formed a relationship with the Yu family, this old man can certainly stop the state preceptor of Donglin country. However, Yu Yun, don't forget that this old man is a Taoist cultivator. The Immortal Palace wants to capture me. Once this old man makes a move, your Yifeng country will be blackmailed. Taoist Xiao is famous for hiding immortals, but the Immortal Palace doesn't seem to have issued an immortal order to arrest him. Yu Yun smiled bitterly. And now that things have come to this Junior can't care too much. Taoist, please make a move. Is Murong Hanping a member of the Murong family? Xiao Hua suddenly asked. Of course. Yu Yun was slightly stunned. A disciple of the Murong family actually bullies the weak like this? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Murong Hanping is just a disciple of the Murong family's side branch. Yu Yun smiled apologetically. If he was a disciple of the Murong family's main branch, how could he come to Donglin country to be the state preceptor? So it's like this. Xiao Hua nodded slightly and said, This old man understands. This old man has met Murong Tsongyun of the Murong family once. Murong Hanping had already released his divine sense, but Xiao Hua was still talking leisurely. Yu Yun was a little anxious, but when he heard that Xiao Hua had met Murong Tsongyun once, he was delighted and said anxiously, Murong Tsongyun is a member of the Murong family's main branch. If Taoist has her keepsake, you only need to take it out, and you can make Murong Hanping retreat. This old man has only met her once. How could I have a keepsake? Xiao Hua smiled. This old man just wants to find a way to satisfy both sides. When Yu Yun heard this, his heart was filled with gratitude. He turned to Yu Zhongli and said, Li, go and tell the monarch that my Yu family will send people out to fight. Yes, father. Yu Zhongli replied and hurriedly rushed over. The monarch of Yifeng country was just a puppet in front of the Yu family. Yu Yun's words were the imperial edict in Yifeng country. Master, if it doesn't work, let this disciple go out to fight. Fu Jiwen volunteered. Xiao Hua shook his head. If you weren't sealed by me, you would definitely be able to do it. But now you are not Murong Hanping's opponent. Sealed? Yu Yun was slightly stunned. He didn't dare to believe it. After all, the current Fujiwen looked like a scholar. He might even be at the end of the scholar stage. Could it be that he is already a scholar who has refined his qi and returned to spirit? Forget it. Master will do it. Xiaohua thought for a while and said, Yes, Master. Fujiwen said respectfully. This disciple will see how Master will kill everyone. Haha, why do I need to kill everyone to deal with a small Murong Tsongyun? Xiaohua laughed loudly and flew into the air. He opened his mouth. Wang! A sword cry soared into the sky. Following the sword cry, 9 sword lights flew out. Confucian sword Dao? Yu Yun stood on the ground, feeling the surge of Jingqi around Xiaohua's body. That sharp sword qi was surging within a radius of several hundred zhang. Every strand of sword qi was accompanied by a strand of righteous qi. It was the pure cultivation of a Confucian cultivator of the sword. Yu Yun couldn't help but be shocked. He knew that what Fujiwen said before was true. While Yu Yun was shocked, the 9 sword lights had already flown out of the capital of Yifeng country. These 9 flying swords were like 9 stars in the sky. Every time they flew, there would be a soul-stirring sword cry emitted from the sword lights, producing an extremely powerful sword force. Moreover, a huge amount of noble spirit rushed in between the rumbling of the sword lights. The noble spirit clustered around the sword lights as if it was clustered around a king. The sword intent of the 9 flying swords condensed into one and streaked across the sky, landing in front of a Confucian cultivator wearing battle armor. This Confucian cultivator was tall and sturdy, with a handsome face. A kind of arrogance that came from being in a high position for a long time involuntarily appeared between his brows. This Confucian cultivator was the state preceptor of Donglin country, Murong Hanping. However, at this time, how could Murong Hanping still feel contempt? Looking at the flying swords whistling through the air, all his previous plans turned into dust and dissipated in the sword qi. How is this possible? When did the Yu family make friends with a master stage cultivator? Regardless of whether it was the information obtained or the clear eyes technique, there was no mention of such a powerful figure. Could it be that the Sima family's disciple just flew away, not because of my army attacking the city? Murong Hanping sensed that this murderous sword qi had completely enveloped him. The true qi in his dantian was rapidly vibrating in this sword qi. A feeling of powerlessness arose in his heart. Could it be that man proposes, God disposes? But if I retreat without a fight, how can this old man explain it to him? Murong Hanping naturally knew that he was definitely not the opponent of the Flying Sword's master. If it was a normal situation, he would have retreated long ago, but now he was unwilling. Or perhaps he didn't dare. Thinking that he was nothing more than a chess piece on someone else's chessboard, Murong Hanping clenched his teeth and extended his hand to take out an old scroll from within his armor. Under the urging of true qi, he raised his hand and threw it. Clang! When the scroll unfolded, a sword cry like that of a ferocious bird rushed out. In an instant, a splendid sword qi similarly rose up like the rising sun. Boom! Like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds, the awe-inspiring qi within a radius of a dozen li from outside the capital of Yifeng nation crazily surged into the sword light. Within the sword light, an inscription of the word sword, that was at least 100 feet in size, stood majestically. Just as this sword qi character appeared, each stroke began to tremble. Enormous sword qi sounds rang out incessantly. There was simply no need for Murong Hanping to do anything. That Mingwen had already sent several dozen flying swords to meet Xiaohua's 9 stars transit of the sun. Ka ka ka! Several flying swords collided with each other in a flash. Thousands of sword qi danced in the air, and all kinds of brilliance overflowed in all directions. The deafening roar resounded through the entire horizon. Murong Hanping urged his true qi to do his utmost to resist the incoming gale. He widened his eyes and used the clear eyes technique to stare fixedly at the sky. A rare kind of expectation appeared on his face. Unfortunately, in merely a few breaths of time, A flying sword that was like a 9-colored dragon flew out from the sword chi and directly landed on the scroll in midair. That scroll shattered like paper. Boom! At the same time that the scroll shattered, even more sword chi transformed into fragmented inscriptions that filled the sky and fluttered like snow falling from the sky. How is this possible? Murong Hanping was completely dumbfounded. Even when the flying sword broke through the scroll and once again landed on top of his head, it was as if he didn't feel it. This is a scroll written by the sage of literature. How can it be so weak? However, the sharp sword chi on his forehead immediately woke him up. Under the sword chi, the space between his eyebrows and other places split open, and streaks of blood seeped out. Murong Hanping didn't have the slightest doubt that as long as the opponent thought about it, his head would be separated from his body. This was something that he, as the teacher of a nation, had never encountered before. The streaks of blood condensed into drops of blood and slowly flowed down, streaking across Murong Hanping's cheek. Murong Hanping didn't dare to move. That flying sword was heavier than any mountain he had ever seen. -13. Chapter 3841. Murong Hanping. Within the sword light, Xiaohua's voice leisurely sounded, very dignified. Yifeng country's Yu family is this old man's old friend. If this old man hadn't revisited this old place on a whim today, I'm afraid this Yifeng country would have been captured by your Donglin country. Logically speaking, this old man should have killed you on the spot, but since this old man and Murong Songyun have met before, I'll let you off today. The 9 flying swords suddenly flew away. Murong Hanping's body lightened, but he felt that his entire body was covered in sweat, soaking his armor. Senior, can you bestow me your name? Murong Hanping probed, still unwilling to give up. You don't deserve to know this old man's name, Xiaohua said coldly. Of course, if you don't want to know, you won't be able to return to Donglin country today. Why haven't you left yet? Another huge rumble sounded, but this time the rumble came from Murong Hanping's mind. A burst of dizziness made Murong Hanping almost unable to stand steadily in the air. Facing such a mysterious opponent, how could Murong Hanping dare to stay any longer? Turning around, Murong Hanping glanced at the cultivators who had been forced to retreat several hundred meters by the flying swords, waved his hand, and said, "Retreat!" Seeing the might of Xiaohua's sword sweep away 1,000 soldiers and force Murong Hanping to flee in panic, Yiyun and Yu Zhongli's faces were full of joy. Not to mention that such a powerful expert was Yu Zhongquan's future master. Even if they could befriend Xiaohua, the Yu family and Yifeng country would definitely be safe for 1,000 years. Junior thanks Taoist Xiao on behalf of my Yifeng country's millions of people. At this time, Yu Zhongli was sincerely convinced and kneeled on the ground. In the distance, the young ruler who was surrounded by people also had an expression of admiration in his eyes. If it weren't for the many palace maids blocking him, he would have already rushed over. Xiaohua looked at everyone and waved his hand, saying, "This Xiao only came here by chance. This Zhao's original intention was Yu Zhongquan. Therefore, if Yu Zhongquan has done anything harmful to Yifeng country, everyone can forget about it. This Xiao is doing this to make up for Yu Zhongquan's previous actions." When Yiyun heard this, his face turned red. To be honest, he hated Yu Zhongquan's actions from the bottom of his heart. He had scolded Yu Zhongquan more than once behind everyone's back. The reason why Yu Zhongquan had repeatedly run away from the marriage was because he had betrayed Yiyun. Now that he saw Xiaohua actually exonerate Yu Zhongquan, how could he be at ease? Taoist Master Xiao, actually, it's all my fault, Yiyun said sincerely. Xiaohua shook his head. You weren't wrong. Yu Zhongquan wasn't wrong either. You've done a lot for Yifeng country and the Yu family, and Yu Zhongquan has also sacrificed a lot for his own ideals. Unfortunately, you can't give Yu Zhongquan what he wants. You can't understand what Yu Zhongquan is thinking. Now that you have this Xiao, you can be at ease. Whatever Yu Zhongquan wants, this old man will give him. This Xiao will bear all the consequences of Yu Zhongquan's actions that have violated the rules of Confucianism. Alas! Yu Yun sighed, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing. This junior gave birth to Quan but I can't raise him, and I can't let him freely soar in the sky of faith and righteousness. Now I can only ask Taoist Master Shao to give Quan a pair of free wings and let him roam freely. And this old man understands. You may rise! Xiao Hua accepted Yu Yun's bow. He understood that Yu Zhongquan's mortal fate with Yifeng country, and even the Yu family, had come to an end. When Yu Yun got up, Xiao Hua transmitted his voice. Yu Yun, at this point, you should explain Yu Zhongquan's whereabouts to this Xiao. Yes. Yu Yun nodded respectfully. He took out a letter from his bosom and handed it to Xiao Hua, saying, This was left behind by Quan when he left home. Although every time Quan left home, he would leave behind a letter, but not every time is true, so this junior can't be sure. Xiao Hua took the letter and read it carefully. Before he could finish reading, an inexplicable fear arose in his heart. Oh, not good! Xiao Hua frowned and cried out in a low voice. Master! Fu Jiwen rarely saw Xiao Hua lose his composure. He hurriedly asked in a low voice, Is there something wrong? Xiao Hua looked left and right. He took out a qianquan bag and threw it to Yu Yun, saying urgently, The grains in this bag are for your Yu family. No matter if it's Yifeng country, Xian country, or even Donglan country, as long as there is a famine, you can give it to them. This? Yu Yun didn't understand the meaning of Xiao Hua's words, but when he opened the qianquan bag, he was wild with joy. He cried out in surprise, Taoist Master Xiao Yu, how do you know that my Yifeng country is full of famine? Xiao Hua didn't have time to explain. He just waved his hand and said, This old man already saw it when I came here. This is a meeting gift from this Xiao to the Yu family. You all can accept it. This old man still has urgent matters to attend to, so I won't delay any longer. See you later. As Xiao Hua spoke, he waved his hand and took Fu Jiwen and Chang Yuan. His figure turned into a rainbow and flashed into the distance. Seeing Xiao Hua fly away, Yu Yun's eyes flashed with extraordinary splendor. Almost without hesitation, he knelt on the ground and kowtowed, saying, Junior Yu Yun thanks Taoist Master Xiao for bestowing the grains. Junior doesn't dare to assume an undeserved reputation. I will spread Taoist Master Zhao's name throughout Yifeng country. Father! Beside him, Yu Zhongli's face lit up with joy. He asked in a low voice, This qianquan bag, is actually grain? That's right. Yu Yun handed the qianquan bag to Yu Zhongli and sighed. That's right. Not to mention Yifeng country, Xian country, and Donglan country, even if another Yifeng country came, it would still be able to solve the current famine. If Taoist Master Xiao had come a few months earlier, Donglan country wouldn't have dared to invade our territory while our Yifeng country was in famine. Sigh, Taoist Master Xiao. What a godly person, truly a great master who bemoans the state of the universe and sympathizes with mankind. With such a great master, little brother Quan's future achievements will far surpass this boy's. Yu Zhongli sighed and said with some envy. But... Yu Yun's eyes were filled with worry. He looked in the direction Xiao Hua left and said in a low voice, I don't know why Taoist Master Xiao left in such a hurry. Is it because of Quan's safety? Or is Quan able to safely become Taoist Master Zhao's disciple? Who knows? Little brother has always been very open-minded. Ordinary Confucian cultivators and great Confucian cultivators wouldn't even look at him. They would only criticize him as a rotten Confucian. Yu Zhongli was also worried. Regardless of whether it was Xiao Hua, Yu Yun, or Yu Zhongquan, none of them noticed that after Xiao Hua transformed into a rainbow and left, on a small mountain less than 10 li away from where Xiao Hua had scared Murong Hanping away with his sword, a short Confucian cultivator poked his head out from the mountain rocks like a ghost. This Confucian cultivator's clothes were different from ordinary Confucian cultivators. It was a kind of earthy yellow official robe. Wasn't it the same as the land Xiao Hua had encountered near Blackwind Ridge that day? And at this moment, on the earthy yellow official robe, strands of cloud and mist emerged from the strange patterns engraved with inscriptions. This cloud and mist lingered together with the mountain rocks and land beneath the Confucian cultivator. Not only did it conceal the Confucian cultivator's figure, it also extracted a force from the mountain rocks and sent it into the Confucian cultivator's body. Is this the Xiaohua that the Immortal Palace's decree said to pay close attention to? He's really powerful! That Confucian cultivator looked in the direction Xiaohua flew and whispered to himself. Even true monarch Qingyuan's troops couldn't capture this cultivator. How could Murong Hanping be his opponent? However, this has nothing to do with this old man. As long as this old man uses the land writ to report his whereabouts to the Hall of Enlightenment, it will be a great merit. As soon as his voice fell, the Confucian cultivator raised his hand and took out an imperial tool that looked like a floating cloud. He opened his mouth and a strand of earthy yellow true qi fell on it. The imperial tool silently expanded and turned into a cloud that flew into the sky. In just a moment, it mixed with the clouds in the sky and no one knew where it went. When the imperial tool flew out, the Confucian cultivator's figure flashed and earthy clouds gushed out from his official robe. The clouds drilled into the ground and the Confucian cultivator's figure also fell into the mountain rocks. It wasn't only his father and eldest brother who were worried about Yu Zhongquan. Even the young lady who didn't have a proper status, Chang Yuan, asked in a faint voice, "Master, you're in such a hurry. Could it be because of Yu Lang?" Xiaohua didn't use the lightning evasion technique. When he heard Chang Yuan's question, he slightly shook his head and said, "Master previously had a kind of great warning sign, but I didn't understand why. However, when I saw the letter Yu Zhongquan left for his family, I suddenly had a premonition. This premonition might be related to Yu Zhongquan, but it might also be related to Master." Master is temporarily unable to distinguish. Yes, where is junior martial brother now? What was written in the letter? Fu Jiwen asked in a low voice. Xiaohua didn't hide it and said, "The letter didn't say much. It only said that he received an invitation from a good friend to go somewhere so that his family wouldn't be worried." "That place, where is it?" Chang Yuan wanted to know where Yu Zhongquan went even more than Fu Jiwen. "Su Province's Fengxiang country." Xiaohua replied word by word. Chang Yuan was somewhat puzzled and secretly pondered. However, Fu Jiwen said in surprise, "Master, Su Province and Beihai are still going in opposite directions. Can you still catch up with the previous plan? Beihai's matter is admittedly important, but Yu Zhongquan's life is even more important." Xiaohua replied without hesitation. "Let's hurry to Fengxiang country first." "Master." Chang Yuan bit her lips, as if she didn't dare to ask too much. However, she was somewhat unwilling and said in a low voice, "Why is Yu Zhongquan going to Fengxiang country?" "Hee, don't think too much," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Yu Zhongquan received a message from a good friend, so he went to Fengxiang country. From the tone of the letter, this good friend should be a man." Chang Yuan's face slightly reddened. She lowered her head and said, "Disciple just wanted to ask. Yu Zhongquan has always been a righteous person. Others only need to say a word, and he would be willing to go through water and tread on fire." "Forget it." Xiaohua's hands fluttered like butterflies through flowers, as if he was forming some hand seals. An indescribable fluctuation spread out in all directions. Similarly, some obscure fluctuations penetrated into Xiaohua's hands. After a moment, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Everything depends on effort. We don't need to be too cautious. Fu Jiwen, you drive the flying carriage. Master will help Chang Yuan see her realm and also guide her cultivation." -13. Chapter 38-42. "Yes, Master!" After Xiaohua released the Pegasus and flying carriage, Fu Jiwen rode the Pegasus and replied calmly, "Chang Yuan." Xiaohua sat down on the flying carriage and comforted her. "Previously, when Master used a secret technique, I discovered that Yu Zhongquan might encounter some misfortune. However, the outcome should be more daunting than dangerous. Do not worry." Chang Yuan breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. "Disciple is worried and confused. With Master here, disciple can be at ease. Tell this old man what you've learned." Xiaohua nodded slightly and asked. After Chan Yuan told Xiaohua everything she learned in her life, Xiaohua nodded inwardly. This Chan Yuan is indeed a talented girl of Xian country. Not to mention that she is proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Even her Confucian cultivation has reached the late stage of refining essence into qi. However, because Chan Yuan is a girl, Chang family did not completely teach her the family's cultivation methods. Her cultivation has been stagnant and unable to advance. Master, my Confucian school has a saying, a girl without talent is virtuous. My father does not advocate for disciple to cultivate more. Although disciple's aptitude is good since childhood, disciple has less opportunities to cultivate than others. Moreover, if not for my mother secretly passing on the family's cultivation methods behind my father's back, disciple would not be able to cultivate to such a level. Chan Yuan finished speaking, bit her lips and whispered, This is also one of the reasons why disciple is determined to become your disciple. Your honor, no need to feel guilty because of the so-called motive. Xiaohua smiled. The reason why people are human is because they have their own thoughts. No one is pure, selfless, and without desire. You and I are fated, so I will accept you as my disciple. That's all. Yes, master, disciple understands. Apart from her mother, Xiaohua is the first person in the world who is willing to help Chan Yuan. Chan Yuan cannot help but feel sour in her nose. Xiaohua smiled and said, Master's knowledge is relatively complicated. Whether it is Confucian cultivation or Taoist cultivation, I can teach you. You can choose yourself. Master, what kind of ability do you have to swallow 100,000 celestial soldiers in one gulp? Disciple is very curious. Chan Yuan's eyes turned sharply and suddenly asked with a smile. What kind of person can swallow 100,000 celestial soldiers in one gulp? Xiaohua waved his hand and said, That's just a way for others to show off their prestige and rope me in. However, at this moment, Xiaohua's figure shook, as if he thought of something. What's wrong? Master. Chan Yuan was slightly stunned and hurriedly asked, Could it be that those people have bad intentions? It's fine. Xiaohua waved his hand. It's just for the sake of some Dao sex forces. It can't be considered bad intentions. Think about it first. As Chan Yuan lowered her head in thought, Xiaohua's heart was in turmoil. Chan Yuan's words had enlightened Xiaohua. The Yao race's inheritance did indeed contain a secret devouring technique. This was a fundamental cultivation method for the Yao race. Unlike humans, the demon clan didn't use the power of the stars and moon to refine it in their meridians. Instead, they directly devoured it. As for the inner cores of demonic beasts that were condensed from the power of the moon and stars, they could also be devoured. Not only that, but the true qi of Confucian cultivators, the golden cores and nascent souls of Taoist cultivators, and the relics of Buddhist sects could also be devoured by the demons. The demonic beasts were divided into moon-plucking, sun-devouring, heaven-absorbing, and space-devouring. Their original intention was to devour. Devouring 100,000 celestial soldiers might not be possible for the current Xiaohua, but in another 100 or 1,000 years, Xiaohua's supreme bloodline would definitely not be a problem. Although Taoist Master Qing Su didn't know that Xiaohua had the Yao race's inheritance, the wild words he spread were also true. Master, disciple has decided. Just as Xiaohua was pondering, Chan Yuan raised her head and said, Disciple wants to practice Master's sword Dao. Oh? Why do you want to practice sword Dao? Xiaohua didn't react for a moment and asked curiously. You haven't practiced sword Qi before. Moreover, Master still wants to teach you a wonderful Dao cultivation technique. However, after Xiaohua finished speaking, he also woke up and said with a smile, So you want to fly side by side like Yu Zhongqian? Chan Yuan blushed slightly and nodded. Disciple doesn't know why Yu Zhongqian is always hiding from me. However, if disciple can learn flying sword and be as happy as Yu Zhongqian, presumably he won't reject disciple anymore. Good. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, Your Honor, sit down cross-legged with your eyes closed. Master will first teach you Sword Dao and other basic 5 Qi origin technique. After Chan Yuan sat down cross-legged, a strand of dark green soul thread gushed out from between Xiaohua's eyebrows. As this soul thread fell into Chan Yuan's forehead, Chan Yuan's body couldn't help but tremble. Beads of sweat the size of beans fell from the top of her head. In just a moment, Chan Yuan's face was deathly pale. Under her tightly closed eyelids, her eyes were rapidly turning. All right. Xiaohua withdrew the soul thread and looked at Chan Yuan, who was about to collapse, and said, "Carefully comprehend the cultivation technique. When you wake up, Master will give you a surprise." "Yes, Master," Chan Yuan answered weakly. In a flash, a day and a night passed. When Chan Yuan opened her eyes, Xiaohua also came out from his closed eyes. He looked at Chan Yuan with a smile and asked, "How was it?" Master's teachings are as vast as the open sea. Disciple can only see the big picture through a tube and have some experience. Chan Yuan's eyes flashed with joy and excitement as she replied. Xiaohua raised his hand and took out a bottle of medicinal pills and handed it to Chan Yuan, saying, "This is a Dao sect medicinal pill. It is effective for Confucian cultivators to condense true qi and produce sword qi. You can take it." Chan Yuan accepted the medicinal pills and thanked her subordinate, thinking that this was a pleasant surprise. However, Xiaohua immediately stretched out his hand again and took out 2 flying swords. He smiled and said, "Master obtained a flying sword a long time ago. It's very outstanding. Master has always wanted to find a master for this flying sword. Now that you've become master, Master will refine this flying sword into 2 Mandarin duck swords. You can choose one." "Thank you, Master." How could Chan Yuan not know Xiaohua's wry smile? She smiled like a flower and picked a slightly smaller and lighter flying sword. Looking at Chan Yuan admiring the flying sword admiringly, Xiaohua said with a smile, "Yuaner, don't look down on this flying sword. After you've refined it, and achieved great success in your cultivation, you'll know how formidable this flying sword is. Master is not bragging, but Dao sect spirit weapons may not be comparable to this flying sword." Chan Yuan was even more excited when she heard this. She bowed and thanked him. "Don't worry." Xiaohua helped Chan Yuan up and said with a smile, "You have to slowly refine this flying sword. You also have to slowly become proficient in the sword art. However, you already have true qi in your body that can refine essence into qi. Master will give you a hand." With that, Xiaohua stretched out his hand and touched Chan Yuan's forehead again. A drop of blood essence was produced. Xiaohua formed a seal and hit the blood essence. The blood essence began to expand rapidly. "Go." Xiaohua raised his hand again. A seemingly faint but extremely solid deer's shape flew out from his fingertip and fell into the blood essence with a clear cry. "Quick!" Xiaohua waved his hands and several crystal lights fell. The blood essence spun rapidly. Obscure textures and talismans gradually appeared on the surface. "Absorb this sword intent into your true qi and comprehend it," Xiaohua instructed Chan Yuan. "This is half of the complete sword intent. If you can comprehend it, you can step into the ranks of sword transformation. Master will leave the other half to you, Zhongquan." Chan Yuan opened her mouth and a mouthful of true qi fell, swallowing the sword intent wrapped in the blood essence into her dantian. As the sword intent fell, the true qi around Chan Yuan's body suddenly moved and emitted a sharp qi. "All right." After finishing all of this, Xiaohua opened his mouth and said, "Fujiwen, Chan Yuan, this place is very far from Xuzhou's Fengxiang country. You should go to the Kunlun Immortal realm to cultivate. Chan Yuan can also meet the other senior brothers." "Kunlun Wonderland?" Chan Yuan was slightly surprised after hearing this. After Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror, she suddenly realized and said with admiration, "Master, this famous Kunlun mirror has fallen into your hands. No wonder the Immortal Palace is looking for trouble with you." "Sure, the Immortal Palace doesn't know about this," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Master will not take it out in ordinary places. Only our disciples can use it." Disciple knows. Disciple will definitely keep it a secret. Chang Yuan hurriedly nodded. Disciple also wants to quickly greet other senior brothers. Later, senior brother Fu, please introduce them. Of course. Fu Jiwen rubbed his nose and said with a smile. However, among master's disciples, there are a few younger than you who can be considered your senior brothers. You don't have to be embarrassed. Everyone has their own specialization. Chang Yuan read many books, how could she not know this? She said with a smile. Little sister is already very happy to be able to enter the sect. Why would I care about this false reputation? Okay. Xiao Hua pretended to activate the Kunlun mirror and sent the two into the Kunlun wonderland. Then, he put away the flying carriage and Pegasus, flew into the sky and used the lightning escape technique to rush toward Shuzhou. Shuzhou was very big and Fengxiang country was not small. Xiao Hua released his soul consciousness and asked several people. It was not too difficult for him to arrive in the sky above Fengxiang country. However, looking at the capital of Fengxiang country below him, Xiao Hua frowned again. It was not only because Yu Zhongquan only said in the letter that he was looking for an old friend in Fengxiang country. However, Yu Zhongquan was afraid that the Yu family would send people to find his old friend. Therefore, Xiao Hua did not know where to find Yu Zhongquan. Moreover, Fengxiang country was founded by a Taoist sect. At this time, Fengxiang country was very similar to Yifeng country. It was in a famine. Although it wasn't to the point where the land was littered with wailing corpses, Xiao Hua couldn't bear the sight of the disaster victims surrounding the city gates, the emaciated villagers in the city, and even the corpses that had starved to death in the distance. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua landed and released his divine sense. He said, "Which fellow Taoist is in charge of Fengxiang country? Please come out and meet me." Xiao Hua's divine sense swept through Fengxiang country's imperial palace and alarmed a group of cultivators. Among them, a young cultivator wearing a Taoist robe and a feathered crown on his head hurriedly flew out of the imperial palace with several disciples. When they saw Xiao Hua's appearance, they were shocked. They all respectfully went forward and saluted. The early nascent soul stage cultivator even bowed and said, "Junior Chang Qingzi greets Taoist Xiao." -13. Chapter 38-43. Xiao Hua is not surprised that Chang Qingzi recognized him. Even Yifeng country's Yiyun and Sima family's Sima Minghong have heard of his name. As a Tao cultivator, it is impossible for Chang Qingzi to not know about him. However, Xiao Hua does not know that under Taoist Qing Su's intentions, he has become a mighty hero. "All of you stand up!" Xiao Hua raises his hand and says with a smile, "I did not expect my name to spread so quickly. Even Su province's fellow Taoists know about me. Taoist is too modest." Chang Qingzi smiled and said, "You killed tens of thousands of heavenly soldiers in the Black Wind Ridge and even defeated perfected Lord Qingyuan, causing the Immortal Palace to lose face. You really helped the Taoist sects of the hidden Immortal Continent to vent our anger. Who doesn't know Taoist Zhao's name in hidden Immortal Continent? Who doesn't want to see Taoist Zhao's appearance? Sigh, how could the battle at Black Wind Ridge be as fierce as fellow Taoists described?" Xiao Hua waves his hand and says, "I admit that I am not that perfected Qingyuan's opponent. I only held one of his immortal generals hostage. This forced him to open his inescapable net, and I barely escaped with my life." How could Chang Qingzi believe him? He says with a smile. "Taoist Xiao must be joking. Perfected Qingyuan was ordered by Immortal Palace to flatten Black Wind Ridge. How could he let Taoist Xiao go for the life of an immortal general? Now that Taoist Zhao's heroic deeds have spread throughout hidden Immortal Continent, there is no need for Taoist Xiao to hide anything anymore. Damn it, I understand." Xiao Hua laughs bitterly in his heart. He already understands Taoist Qing Su's intentions. Since Xiao Hua was unwilling to submit to the grandest ancestor, Taoist Qing Su decided to create momentum for Xiao Hua, allowing Xiao Hua's reputation to soar, attracting the attention of the Confucian cultivators and the Immortal Palaces. Based on Xiao Hua's current cultivation of upper 4th grade essence force, it was unlikely that he would be able to deal with these people who were eyeing him covetously. When Xiao Hua had nowhere else to go, he had no choice but to submit to the Grand Mist Ancestor. But how could Qing Suzhenren know that Xiao Hua's strength was not merely at the 4th level of elemental energy? The fame of Xiao Hua's prowess really lived up to its name. Xiao Hua's world-shaking deeds were not inferior to defeating Sun Jian and annihilating tens of thousands of celestial soldiers. It was just that these matters were not known to the public for the time being. As the saying goes, if you plant flowers with the intention, the flowers won't bloom, but if you plant a willow unintentionally, the willow will grow. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and didn't want to explain anything. Chang Qingzi bowed again and said, "Taoist Master Xiao, please come to my residence to serve tea." "All right." Xiao Hua nodded, descending together with Chang Qingzi and the others. After Chang Qingzi personally served the spirit tea and respectfully drank a few sips, Chang Qingzi carefully asked, "Does Taoist have any orders for coming to the country of Phoenix Soaring? This old man was originally passing by Fengxiang country, but when I was in the air, I saw Fengxiang country. Fengxiang country is surrounded by disasters and countless refugees, so I came down to ask about the situation." Xiao Hua had already thought of an explanation, so he replied with a concerned expression, "Sai, Taoist Master Xiao is truly merciful." As soon as he heard about the disaster, a worried expression appeared on Chang Qingzi's face, and he said, "This junior is worried about this. Although this junior is already a nascent soul cultivator, it is impossible for me to conjure food out of thin air to help the people of Fengxiang survive the famine. On the other hand, Fengxiang country is surrounded by Confucian cultivators. Although they haven't reached the point of being incompatible with our country, it is still impossible for them to provide us with some food. Of course, in recent years, there have been many disasters, and those Confucian cultivator countries are also in a difficult situation, so they can't be blamed. Oh, this old man came to see you today for this matter." Xiao Hua didn't ask any more questions. He stretched out his hand and said, "Give me a few qianquan bags." "Taoist Master Xiao, this is..." Happiness came too suddenly, and Chang Qingzi didn't dare to believe it, so he asked in astonishment. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This old man occasionally gets some old grains here, but I didn't care about them before. Now that I am passing by Fengxiang country, I can give them to you to solve your urgent situation." "Good." Chang Qingzi was really happy, and he hurriedly ordered his disciples to give him a few qianquan bags. Xiao Hua pretended to take out a qianquan bag, and put the grains in the bag, then handed them over to Chang Qingzi. Chang Qingzi scanned with his divine sense, and saw that there were countless grains in the qianquan bags. Surprise appeared in his eyes, he had never seen so many grains in his life. "This old man only has this much grains, is it enough?" Xiao Hua was a bit proud, but his tone was still uncertain. It's enough. Chang Qingzi thought that Xiao Hua had never been in charge of a country before, so he didn't know how much grains were enough. Moreover, to cultivators, grains were no different from rocks, and cultivators didn't have any concept of how much was enough. He hurriedly and carefully replied, "Only 30% of the grains is enough for the people of my Fengxiang country to eat. Even if we leave the grains for farming, we won't use 40%. "Good, then you can keep the rest of the grains for yourself." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "If it's possible, this old man suggests that you distribute the remaining grains to the Confucian cultivator countries around us, and also use this opportunity to establish good relations with these countries. This junior will carefully consider senior's suggestion." Chang Qingzi smiled very easily, and as he replied to Xiao Hua, he waved his hand and called over his disciples. He handed over a few qianquan bags to them, and instructed them to bring them to the imperial palace for the king to provide relief to the disaster victims. Then, Chang Qingzi said respectfully, "Senior Xiao, please wait for a moment, this junior will set up a banquet to express this junior's gratitude." "There's no need." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "This old man still has some matters to attend to, and will leave after asking you a few questions. Senior, there's no need to be in such a hurry." Chang Qingzi hurriedly said, "It's just a banquet, if this junior doesn't perform the duties of a host, I really won't be able to live with myself. Hee, this old man understands your intentions, Xiaohua said with a smile. This old man's matter is a bit urgent, so I can't stay here for long. All right then, may I know what this junior can do for senior? Chang Qingzi could only ask. Are there any Confucian cultivator families in Fengxiang country? Xiaohua probed. Confucian cultivator families? Chang Qingzi was slightly stunned, and then his eyes turned, and he said with a smile. Senior wants to find Confucian cultivator families in the country where we Taoists founded our country? That's a rather difficult matter. Then, are there any Confucian cultivators? Xiaohua was still unwilling to give up. After all, Yu Zhongquan was a Confucian cultivator, and the possibility that his old friend was also a Confucian cultivator was relatively high. Of course there are Confucian cultivators, and there are quite a few of them, Chang Qingzi replied. May I know which one senior is looking for? Do you have a list? Xiaohua asked helplessly. When Chang Qingzi took out the jade eye and handed it to Xiaohua, looking at the densely packed names, Xiaohua felt like he was looking for a needle in a haystack. Unfortunately, he patiently used the clear eyes technique to look carefully, and none of the names caught his attention. Forget it! Xiaohua returned the jade eye to Chang Qingzi and sighed in his heart. Perhaps it's just as Yu Yan said, and the words that Yu Zhongquan left behind might not be the truth. Senior, are you looking for something? Chang Qingzi put away the jade eye, lowered his head to look at the ground, and then asked again. Xiaohua stood up and said with a smile, I'm looking for a young Confucian cultivator. As for who it is, I don't have any special description. It seems that he's not in Fengxiang right now. Chang Qingzi suddenly came to a realization, and asked in a suppressed voice. Taoist Master Xiao Yu, are you looking for the Zhu family? Zhu family? Xiaohua was stunned. Yes, the Zhu family of Wuyuan County. Chang Qingzi nodded and said, Wuyuan County is in the northern part of my Fengxiang country. The current head of the Zhu family is called Zhu Qing, and the Zhu family's young master, Zhu Xiang, can be considered a young Confucian cultivator. The Zhu family is in Fengxiang country? Xiaohua stopped and asked curiously. Didn't you say that there are no Confucian cultivator families in Fengxiang country? Senior might not know, but the Zhu family has long been in decline. Now, it can't even be considered a Confucian cultivator family. Chang Qingzi smiled and said, Moreover, I won't hide it from Senior. If it weren't for this Zhu family, Junior probably wouldn't be able to establish a Taoist sect in Fengxiang country. Why do you say that? Xiaohua's heart was moved. He thought of the bone that Zhu Qing gave him that day and asked while secretly calculating. Chang Qingzi smiled and said, Senior must know that the Zhu family once produced a sage like Zhu Shi. Although the family has already declined, how could any Confucian cultivator dare to show off their knowledge in front of the Zhu family? Which cultivator would dare to establish a Confucian cultivator country in Fengxiang country? Senior, look at the Confucian cultivator countries around Fengxiang country. Junior's Fengxiang country is sandwiched in the middle. The reason why they allowed Junior to establish a country here, isn't it because they want Junior to keep an eye on this centipede that won't fall even if it dies? So it's like that. It seems, the knowledge of establishing a country is really not small. Xiaohua shook his head and said with a smile, This Zhao's cultivation is not bad, but in the path of establishing a country, I am still far from it. Of course, with the pressure of the Immortal Palace, this Xiao will not establish a country in the future. Taoist Xiao, why do you need to establish a country? All of the Taoist sects in the hidden Immortal Continent are Taoist Zhao's countries. Chang Qingzi said respectfully. All right, this Xiao won't disturb you anymore. Xiaohua cupped his hands. It seems like the Zhu family is also not the place this old man is looking for. This old man will go to other places in Su province to take a look. Junior respectfully sends Taoist Xiao off. Chang Qingzi sent Xiaohua out and respectfully sent him off. Seeing Xiaohua fly away and not heading towards the north, Chang Qingzi frowned slightly and thought to himself. If I guess correctly, Taoist Xiao should be looking for the Zhu family. Could it be that those rumors among the Confucian cultivators are true? Taoist Xiao really took the Zhu family's inheritance treasure? Then should I send a message to that old senior? Sigh, this is really making things difficult for I. If I send a message, Taoist Xiao might be in trouble. If I don't send a message, if that old senior finds out, I won't be able to keep my life. After pondering for a long time, Chang Qingzi once again looked at the direction Xiao Hua left and said to himself, "Forget it, perhaps I guessed wrong. However, this matter involves the Zhu family. Even if I guessed correctly, I still have to send a message. I hope Taoist Xiao didn't go to the Zhu family." -13. Chapter 38-44. Since he had made his decision, Chang Qingzi quickly descended from the cloud, no longer paying attention to the bystanders, and entered the quiet room. Indeed, as Chang Qingzi had hoped, Xiao Hua wasn't heading to Wuyuan County's Zhu clan this time. He had only come to Phoenix Soaring Country to look for Yu Zhongquan. However, Wuyuan County was in Phoenix Soaring Country. Xiao Hua had a faint premonition that the one who had invited Yu Zhongquan here was a disciple of the Zhu clan. Moreover, on the bone that Zhu Qing had given Xiao Hua that day, there were 2 verses left behind by sage Zhu Shi. The ancestral tree is like the Xiantian Qi, the family tree is like silk and silk of the younger generation. Xiao Hua had never understood the meaning of these words. Now that he had arrived at the Zhu clan, how could he not go there to take a look? Xiao Hua flew for a moment, and released his soul sense. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he descended and changed his appearance slightly, transforming into Zhang Xiaohua with a small nose and small eyes. He also changed into Confucian attire and flew towards Wuyuan County on a cloud. Not long after, Xiaohua arrived at the left side of Wuyuan County. However, when Xiaohua used the clear eyes technique to take a look, doubts arose in his heart. Logically speaking, a place that could give birth to a Confucian sage like Zhu Shi was definitely a spiritual and divine place. However, let alone spiritual and divine place, the place in front of Xiaohua couldn't even be considered as a place with beautiful mountains and limpid waters. What was special was that the towering mountain ridge was covered in gray spots of moss. There were also strange patterns on the moss that made one's hair stand on end. The moss covered most of the mountain ridge, and there were very few tall trees, let alone fruit trees. The river that surrounded the town under the mountain ridge was also suffused with a sour aura. There were also some gray spots floating on the river's surface. This aura entered Xiaohua's nose and mouth, and an indescribable feeling arose. It seemed to be somewhat familiar, but also very unfamiliar. There were also some paddy fields between the mountain ridge and the river, but where was the rice in the paddy fields? Broken rice stalks poked out of the dark green water and were inserted into the air in a lonely manner. Strange! Xiaohua looked at everything in front of him and was endlessly bewildered. Is this place Wuyuan County? Could it be that I flew in the wrong direction again? Thinking of this, Xiaohua raised his eyes and looked at the city wall. The city wall was built along the river, and there was only a short section. This section had long collapsed, but the words, Wuyuan County, could still be seen clearly on the city gate. When Xiaohua's gaze passed through the city gate and saw everything in Wuyuan County, he unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air. This was because inside the city gate was a town similar to Longevity Town. Moreover, this town looked several times bigger than Longevity Town. The buildings in the city were also more majestic and densely packed than those in Longevity Town. Be it taverns, inns, markets, or academies, the silhouettes of all of them could be faintly seen. However, these buildings were now like the mountain ridge, growing that kind of grayish-white moss. Although the moss was far less than the mountain ridge, that kind of faint strange aura was enough to cover up the vitality of the entire town. Wasn't that right? The entire Wuyuan County was silent. Occasionally, 1 or 2 dog barks could be heard, but they were also mournful cries. It was as if there was no one here. However, Xiaohua could clearly see that within the town, there were many people in ragged clothes walking weakly. These people were all emaciated and their eyes were lifeless. Rather than saying that they were walking, it was better to say that they were taking a night stroll. Suppressing the astonishment in his heart, Xiao Hua looked towards the depths of the town. Gradually, shock appeared on his face. The ugliness in the dark, the bestial desire in human nature became increasingly clear. Things that ordinary people couldn't imagine were all exposed to Xiao Hua's clear sight technique. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed slightly. He couldn't bear to look anymore. He withdrew his divine ability and looked at the dusk on the horizon. He pondered. Humans live because of food. Without this basic guarantee, human dignity has no value. While thinking, Xiao Hua took out his Jianquan pouch. He hesitated whether or not he should take out some food. Creak, creak. At this moment, from within the town gate, the soft sound of an axle could be heard. It was a worn-out donkey cart that was slowly coming out. Xiao Hua looked over and saw a child wearing patched clothes sitting on the donkey cart. Beside the child were some worn-out clothes. In front of the donkey cart, a hunchbacked old man was leading a skinny, crippled donkey. Step by step, he looked back and carefully walked towards Xiao Hua's direction. The crippled donkey did not move quickly, and the hunchbacked old man did not rush it. Only when the donkey cart left the city gates did the old man turn his head forward. A hint of relief appeared on his face, which was so thin that it was curled into a ball. It was also at this moment that the lame donkey's hooves went limp and it fell to the ground. At the same time, the donkey raised its head and cried out, "Neigh, neigh, neigh!" Although the donkey's neighing wasn't loud, it was enough to break the silence of the entire town. At the same time, the expression of the old man who was driving the donkey changed greatly. He hurriedly pulled the black reins and strenuously pulled the donkey up. Then, he forcefully slapped the donkey's butt and led it to run. The old man's worry wasn't without reason. When the donkey cart ran for about 10 zhang, the people who heard the donkey's neighing suddenly appeared from all over the town gate. Their eyes were filled with a green light as they chased after the donkey cart. The old man was already old. After running for another 10 zhang, he was already panting. He turned his head to look at the people who were chasing after them and shouted, "Yazi, sit on the donkey cart and don't move. When the donkey cart can't run anymore or when those people catch the donkey, quickly jump down from the donkey cart. Don't let them catch you. Either hide by the side of the road or escape into the wilderness. Take advantage of the fact that the sky isn't completely dark and quickly run far away." Before the old man could finish his words, his legs went soft, and he fell to the ground. He didn't forget to quickly release the reins in his hands so that the donkey cart could continue running. "Grandpa!" The child was still young after all. When he saw this, he couldn't help but cry out. Tears flowed down his dirty face, and he even struggled to get down from the cart. "Yazi, don't move!" The old man's face was about to be scraped by the ground, but he still didn't forget his grandson and shouted. Although Xiao Hua was a bit far away, he could see and hear everything clearly. He slightly raised his hand and supported the old man. Then, with a wave of his hand, the old man's body flew into the air and landed on the donkey cart. The old man was stunned at first. Then fear flashed through his eyes. He couldn't say a word. His eyes were lifeless, and he just let the donkey cart run away. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed. He knew that the old man wanted to escape from Wuyuan County. However, how could the grandfather and grandson go so far without a donkey cart? As for the people chasing after the donkey cart, their target was most likely this lame donkey. Xiao Hua didn't even think about it. He waved his hand and the grain seeds in his Jianquan pouch fell from the sky in front of the people chasing after them. Puff puff! There were a lot of grain seeds. The few people in front who still had the strength to run faster ran and plunged their heads into the grain seeds. He! When the few people poked their heads out of the grain seeds, they looked at the grain seeds that suddenly appeared in a daze. They didn't have the strength to speak and could only open their mouths and cry out a few times. Then, they plunged their heads into the grain seeds and opened their mouths to eat. Xiao Hua's grain seeds were naturally extraordinary. They weren't shriveled like ordinary grains. As the few people in front swallowed, a sweet fragrance gradually spread out. Strands of green juice also flowed down from their mouths. After the few people in front ate, the people behind them smelled the food. How could they still chase after the donkey cart? They also plunged into the pile of grain and greedily ate it. Looking at the lame donkey, it had only struggled to run for several tens of feet. Finally, it was exhausted and its footsteps slowed down. Even the smell of the people chewing on the grain attracted the donkey. The donkey turned its butt with difficulty and swung its half-broken tail, wanting to return. Unfortunately, the donkey was really weak. The broken cart was also a bit heavy. However, after hearing the soft creaking sound, the cart was unable to move. At this moment, the old man finally came back to his senses. The fear on his face hadn't disappeared. He hurriedly raised his head and looked to the left. However, it was currently evening. The old man's vision was blurry and he couldn't see clearly. Grandpa, Grandpa! On the contrary, the child, although he was very curious about how the old man flew over, he only felt that it was fun. He wasn't particularly afraid. At this moment, he pounced over and hugged the old man's neck. There's food over there. It's very fragrant. Ah. Food? When he heard the word food, the old man was also shocked. He immediately turned his head. When he saw the mountain-like grain, his eyes also emitted a green light. Almost without thinking, he jumped down from the donkey cart and rushed a few steps towards the grain. However, after rushing a few steps, the old man bit his lip and stopped. He turned his head to look at the child and then turned his head to look at the grain. He seemed to be really hesitant. Xiaohua understood the old man's torment. If he went back, there might be food, but he might not be able to escape. However, if he didn't go back, the grain could save the child's life. Xiaohua didn't let the old man think too much. He waved his hand and scattered some more grain on the ground. He said, "Come to this old man. You." When the old man heard Xiaohua's voice, he was startled. He looked at Xiaohua with an extremely frightened expression. However, when he saw Xiaohua's appearance, Xiaohua's scholarly robes, and even the grain in front of Xiaohua, his face calmed down. When he swallowed his saliva, the lame donkey moved and moved towards the grain at Xiaohua's feet. "Are you hungry?" Xiaohua looked at the skinny child and felt quite uncomfortable in his heart. He didn't dare to give him the spirit fruits in his space, so he could only send some food to the child. "Thank you, big brother." The child didn't know that the situation was strange. When he saw the grain in front of him, he didn't even think about it. He grabbed some and stuffed it into his mouth. However, when he touched his lips, he was somewhat hesitant. He extended his small hand to the old man and said, "Grandpa, there's grain. Eat." -13. Chapter 38:45. My good grandson, you eat it. There's so much here. Grandpa will eat this. The old man's nose turned sour and tears fell down. He used his black sleeves to wipe his face and said with a smile, "Thank you, big brother." The child happily smiled and put the raw food into his mouth. He didn't forget to thank him while chewing. "This little one thanks master." The old man didn't take the food first. Instead, his knees went soft, and he was about to kneel down. Xiaohua hurriedly supported him and said with a smile, "You should eat some first." "Okay." The old man originally wanted to be polite, but he couldn't resist the temptation of the food. He bent down and grabbed a handful from the ground and greedily chewed. For a moment, the old man felt that the whole world was filled with a kind of fragrance. The old man could only hear the sound of wolfing down food. Xiaohua looked at the old man and the child, then raised his eyes to look at the city gate. There was no lack of worry between his brows. Sure enough, the first few people who rushed into the pile of food were already choking. Their eyes turned white and they couldn't eat anymore. Then they stopped. However, they didn't stay idle. They picked up the food with both hands and stuffed it into their clothes and clothes. How much could a person's clothes be stuffed? Then, there was a clever person who took off his clothes and spread them on the ground. He dug out a lot of food from the pile of food and wanted to pack it into a bag to take away. However, the clothes were really thin and rotten. That person had just carried the food on his shoulder. Since the clothes were torn, the food inside fell down along the person's body. The food fell to the ground. Someone casually grabbed it and swallowed it. That person anxiously pushed the person beside him and shouted, "Get lost, this is mine. Who said it's yours?" "It's mine!" The person who was pushed down was naturally unhappy. He actually abandoned the pile of food beside him and rushed in front of the other person to shout. The clenched fist in his hand naturally fell down. Needless to say, the two people who had just eaten began to tear at each other. A little further away from these two people, a slightly taller person had also snatched the food first. Seeing that someone was tearing the food apart, although he didn't think so much before, he immediately understood at this moment. Almost without hesitation, he lifted his leg and kicked the person who had his head buried in the food aside. He sneered and said, "Scram, this is my place!" The man who was kicked down rolled on the ground a few times. He looked at the man's stature, and then looked at the man beside him who was shorter than him. He simply lifted his leg and kicked the other man away, shouting, "Get over there, this is mine!" After kicking that person away, this person hurriedly dug out a piece of grain from the pile just like the tall person from before and surrounded it with crushed stones. He even held a few stones in his hands and guarded it like a tiger watching its prey. It was as if the food they had dug out was theirs, and no one was allowed to fight for it. Alas, human greed is nothing more than this! Xiaohua watched as these people slowly divided the food into dozens of piles. It was exactly the same as what he had expected. He couldn't help but sigh. However, the development of the situation didn't stop. It was still going in the direction he was worried about. Although there was a lot of food, there were also a lot of people fighting for it. Moreover, there were still more people coming from within the city after hearing the news. Noises, tearing, punches and kicks. In a moment, the deathly silent city was bustling with noise and excitement. The food in front of the city gate was like a stone thrown into a pool of water, causing ripples to spread throughout the city. "Not good!" Xiaohua sighed as he observed. Suddenly, he saw a person holding a large stone and smashing it towards the head of another person who had fallen on the ground. If the stone fell, that person would definitely die on the spot. Xiaohua was slightly angry. He coldly smiled and hurriedly waved his hand, imprisoning everyone at the city gate. Xiaohua was previously hesitant and didn't immediately take out the food. He was afraid that in this kind of situation, people who were extremely hungry would definitely not even care about their lives in front of food. If there were Phoenix Soaring Empire's soldiers suppressing them, perhaps there would be good order and everyone would be able to get food. However, if there was no deterrence, how could there be order when these people rushed up? Under the ugliness of human nature, it was inevitable that there would be ugliness comparable to what happened in the city earlier. "Forget it!" Xiaohua waved his hand and the pile of food in front of the city gate flew into the air. Like a layer of rain, it evenly fell all over the city. "Since this Xiao has already taken it out, I won't take it back. This way, perhaps more people can be saved. As for the result, even this Xiao can't predict it." When Xiaohua removed the confinement technique, everyone who was fighting for the food was dumbfounded. However, this astonishment only lasted for a moment. Everyone rushed into the city to snatch the food scattered on the ground. "Master!" Although the old man couldn't clearly see Xiaohua or the people around him, he could clearly see what was happening. He smiled and said, "Master, don't blame them. People who are extremely hungry are like this." And Xiaohua nodded and said, "This old man doesn't blame them. This old man is just a bit emotional. Emotional about the ugliness in people's hearts." "Oh, what are you doing? The others didn't escape. Why are you the only one who wants to escape?" "I'll let Master know." The old man smiled bitterly and said, "It's not that they don't want to escape, but they ate all the donkeys and horses and can't go far. This little one can't bear to eat this lame donkey, so I want to keep it to pull me and my grandson to escape." However, as he said that, The old man looked at the sky and said with a bitter smile, "It's already dark. This little one wants to leave but can't. Moreover, we can't go back to the city now." "Can't leave when it's dark?" Xiaohua looked back at the road behind him. Although it was already dark, the road was faintly visible. It wasn't completely impossible to walk. "Master, please save this little one and my grandson." The old man hurriedly knelt down and shouted. Xiaohua smiled and helped him up and said, "Don't worry, these food are all for you." "No, no!" The old man looked around with a bit of panic and shouted, "Master, this little one isn't talking about this. This little one begs Master to take us away from here." Xiaohua noticed the old man's panic. He narrowed his eyes and scanned the surroundings. He didn't find anything and asked curiously, "What's wrong here? Why are you so scared?" "Master, it's already dark. If it's possible, you should quickly take this little one and my grandson away. There's a ghost here, a ghost that eats people." At this time, the sky was gradually turning dark and the moon had yet to show its head from the clouds. The old man was really scared. He took half a step forward and shouted in front of Xiaohua while trembling with fear. "Ah?" Xiaohua was shocked. It was as if he was struck by lightning. He instantly thought of something. Damn it, no wonder the aura in the mountain ridge and river was a bit strange. Wasn't it a slight aura of the Yellow Springs? But why is there an aura of the Yellow Springs near Wuyuan County? "Master." Seeing Xiaohua's shock, the old man was even more scared. He begged in a low voice, "If you can't save these two people, you can save this little one and my grandson, oh?" Xiaohua came back to his senses and said with a smile, "Don't worry, this old man can save you. Don't be afraid. Tell me, what happened in Wuyuan County? How do you know there's a ghost here?" "Master." How could the old man be at ease? He begged, "If you can save this little one, please save this little one first. When we reach a safe place, it won't be too late for this little one to speak." "That's fine too." Xiaohua nodded. He looked at the child on the donkey cart and asked, "Where do you want to go?" "This old man will send you there." "Anywhere is fine," the old man hurriedly said, "as long as we leave Wuyuan County." "So, you have no place to rely on?" Xiaohua muttered. "Yes, this little one's son and daughter-in-law already died outside Wuyuan County and never came back. This little one only has this grandson left." The old man replied with a sad face, "This little one has some skills. After leaving Wuyuan County, I should be able to find a place to live." "Ai." Xiaohua sighed and said, "Right now, Fengxiang Country is suffering from a disaster. Although it's a bit better than Wuyuan County, it's not much better. The king of Fengxiang Country is about to send disaster relief. If nothing unexpected happens, this disaster will be over soon. Since you're unfamiliar with the place, why don't you stay in Wuyuan County? I'd rather die in a foreign land than return to Wuyuan County." The old man replied resolutely. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and asked, "Do you know Wuyuan County's Zhu family?" "Zhu family? Zhu Cheng, Master Zhu?" the old man asked. "Yes, it's Zhu Cheng." The old man nodded. "Of course this little one knows Master Zhu. That's a famous family in my Wuyuan County. Where is Zhu family in Wuyuan County? If this old man sends you there, what do you think?" Xiaohua asked again. "This?" The old man hesitated for a moment and said, "Of course this little one has no problem. Master Zhu is a family of saints. Ghosts don't dare to approach. But Master Zhu, he... Don't worry about this." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "You just need to tell this old man where Zhu family is. Master Zhu isn't in Wuyuan County. He lives in the suburbs." The old man pointed in the direction of Wuyuan County and said, "If you want to go there, you need to pass through the entire Wuyuan County. Haha, with this old man here, why do you need to worry about this?" Xiaohua laughed. With a wave of his sleeve, he rolled up the donkey cart and other things and rushed into the air. In the blink of an eye, he flew past Wuyuan County. When he landed on the ground, the old man still couldn't believe his eyes. He rubbed his blurry eyes and looked around. At this moment, the sleepy child beside him also became energetic. He looked at the lights in the distance and shouted, "Grandpa, look, this is the Zhu family village. Over there is the locust tree planted by the saints. Thank you, master, thank you." The old man was crying tears of joy. He knew that he had met a benefactor and was able to escape with his life. He hurriedly shouted, "Who has come to my Zhu family village?" The old man and the child's voice traveled far in the night sky. Not far away, a flame flashed in the darkness, and several lanterns appeared from the ground. A voice also came from the ground. -13. Chapter 38-46. Under the light of the lantern, several zhang away from Xiaohua, there is a simple barrier made of stones and sacks erected there. Behind the barrier is a deep pit. Several men dressed in martial attire jumped out of the pit with steel blades and other weapons in their hands and lanterns in their hands. They walk very cautiously towards Xiaohua. "I am Xiaohua, Taoist's name is Taoist Master Xiao." Xiaohua is not like ordinary cultivators who ignore these worldly servants and directly release their divine sense to lure Zhu Qing out. Instead, he indifferently announces his name. You are Taoist Master Xiao?" These men have obviously heard of Xiaohua's name. Hearing Xiaohua announce his name, they are shocked. They slightly raise their lanterns, wanting to see clearly. "Ghost!" Before these men can see Xiaohua's appearance, the old man next to Xiaohua screams and collapses on the ground. "Ghost!" The old man collapses. How can the group of servants still care about Xiaohua's appearance? They all shout, throw their lanterns on the ground, retreat in panic, or brandish their steel blades in an attempt to defend. "Humph!" Xiaohua coldly snorts. "This is only this old man's illusion technique. Where did this ghost come from?" Xiaohua flicks his hand and a fireball flies into the air, illuminating the surrounding several zhang. "Oh, it really is Taoist Master Xiao. It is Taoist Master Xiao. This little one has seen a portrait of Taoist Master at the young master's place. This little one has even kowtowed in front of Taoist Master Zhao's portrait." Several servants started to shout at the same time, but no one dared to step forward. Although the old man understands that this is Xiaohua's illusion technique, he was so scared that he collapsed on the ground. How can he stand up? "Who is here? Oh, isn't this Taoist Master Xiao?" Just as they are talking, from the darkness of Zhujia village, an old man over 40 years old in embroidered clothes flies over. When the old man sees Xiaohua, he immediately shouts in surprise. He lands in front of Xiaohua and bows. "This one is Zhu Changxing, greetings benefactor." Xiaohua has already seen this old man's appearance. He should be one of the Zhu Jia disciples he rescued from the prison of the Copper Pillar State more than 20 years ago. At this moment, he smiles and helps Zhu Changxing up. "Get up. Is Zhu Qing in the village?" "My family head is in the villa." Zhu Changxing stood up and said happily, "If he knows that you are visiting, he will definitely." "Oh, please wait a moment, I will ask the family head to come out and welcome you." "No need." Just as Xiaohua was about to stop him, Zhu Changxing had already waved his hand. A two-colored truchi that was like a rainbow flew into the air, transforming into a rainbow bridge that fell into the villa. Wang! As the rainbow bridge fell, a slight rumbling sound came from inside the villa. A scroll flew out carrying several Confucian scholars. Several rays of clear light swept over Xiaohua and the others, then fell on Xiaohua's face. In front of Xiaohua, a voice familiar to Xiaohua cried out, "Xiao! Taoist Xiao! Haha, old Master Zhu, it's been almost 20 years since we last met. You're still as elegant as ever." Xiaohua smiled as he walked over and cupped his hands in greeting. The person in front of him was naturally Zhu Qing. However, at this time, Zhu Qing looked somewhat old, far from a Confucian expert who had refined his qi and returned to the divine. "Taoist Xiao is the real immortal." Zhu Qing activated the scroll and brought everyone down. He walked a few steps and was about to kneel down. He said, "I often thought of Taoists, But I really didn't expect that Taoist would come today. Even more so, I didn't expect that Taoist's appearance hadn't changed at all. How could Xiaohua let Xu Qing kneel down? He hastily helped him up, and the people behind Xu Qing who were about to kneel down were also helped up by Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled again and said, I was also passing by because of some troublesome matters. I thought of the past, and specially came to see old Master Zhu. I don't dare. Taoist can just call me Xu Qing. I don't deserve this title in front of Taoist. Zhu Cheng hastily waved his hand. Then call me fellow Immortal Zhu, Xiaohua said with a smile. I'll listen to Taoist's instructions. Zhu Cheng hastily smiled. He looked at the old man on the ground, the donkey cart and the children behind Xiaohua, then asked, Taoist, what's the troublesome matter? I wonder if I can help you. Haha, let me ask you, did your Zhu family village have Yu Zhongquan from Yifeng country of Yu province come to visit? Xiaohua asked with a smile. Yu province? Yu Zhongquan? Zhu Qing frowned and shook his head slightly. I don't know this fellow Immortal. Where did Taoist hear this from? Where's Zhu Xiang? This Yu Zhongquan is about the same age as Zhu Xiang. Xiaohua explained. Jin is studying hard in the study. I've never heard of anyone coming to visit him. Zhu Qing shook his head even more. At this time, an old man behind Zhu Qing hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, Big brother Jin what about him? Zhu Qing was startled. He turned his head and said, He's not in the study? Jin should be in the study of Qilan courtyard. However, just as Taoist Xiao said, he did invite some old friends to come to my Zhu family village. This damned unfilial son. Zhu Qing was furious when he heard this, but when he looked at Xiaohua, he suppressed his anger and said in a low voice, I've let Taoist see a joke. My unfilial son invited some old friends behind my back. The Yu Zhongquan that Taoist spoke of is probably among them. Seeing Zhu Qing's appearance, Xiaohua immediately understood how Xu Xiang's indecisive character was formed. However, he couldn't say too much. He smiled and said, Taoist Zhu, please help me confirm. Okay, Taoist Xiao, please wait a moment. I'll be right back. The old man behind Zhu Qing agreed. He flew into the air and landed inside the Zhu family village. Zhu Qing opened his mouth as if he wanted to ask something, but closed it again. Xiaohua looked at this thoughtfully. In fact, if he didn't care about Xu Cheng's face and released his divine sense, how could he not see it? However, since the Zhu family people didn't use divine sense techniques to send messages, maybe there was something fishy about it. Xiaohua was happy to go with the flow. Also, Xiaohua pointed at the old man beside him and explained, I met this person when I was passing by Wuyuan County. I don't know his name, but seeing how pitiful he is, I asked Taoist Zhu to take him in. Of course. Zhu Qing was deeply touched by Xiaohua's kindness. He didn't think it was strange at all and hurriedly replied, This is just a small matter for me. It's nothing. Thank you, Master Zhu, thank you, Taoist Xiao. The old man was finally able to stand up and hurriedly kowtowed again. Xiaohua smiled and helped the old man up. Now you won't say I'm a ghost, right? While speaking, Xiaohua slightly paid attention to Xu Cheng's expression. Sure enough, Xu Cheng's eyebrows jumped and his eyes flashed with panic. I don't dare! It's all my fault. The old man bowed to Xiaohua and said with a smile, Hey, where did you get this grain? At this time, Xu Cheng's gaze fell on the donkey cart behind Xiaohua. He looked at the grain beside the child and asked in surprise. The old man looked at the grain on the cart and thought of the grain left on the roadside. He said with a regretful tone, This was all given by Taoist Xiao. Just now, Taoist Xiao scattered a lot of it in Wuyuan County. Taoist Xiao. Zhu Qing turned to look at Xiaohua and asked carefully, This grain, how much do you have? I came to Zhu family village from afar and haven't had a sip of hot tea, Xiaohua said with a smile. Zhu Cheng's face slightly reddened. He hurriedly bowed and said, It's all my fault. Taoist Xiao, please, okay. Xiaohua nodded. Fellow Taoist Zhu, please lead the way. Light clouds appeared under Xu Cheng's feet. He led Xiaohua and a group of Zhu family disciples into Zhu family village. As for the old man who didn't say his name in the end, he was also led by 2 guards into Zhu family village. Presumably, with the protection of Zhu family, he wouldn't have to worry about making a living in the future. The entire Zhu family village didn't have any origin formation protecting it. It was no different from an ordinary village. Xiaohua followed Zhu Qing and landed in a guest hall. The hall was rather simple. Apart from a few tables and chairs, there were only some flowers and trees. There was no other decoration. At the head of the hall, there was a portrait hanging on the wall. The scroll of the portrait looked old, but it was unusually spotless. Faintly, there was a layer of extremely dim treasure light emitting from the portrait. Xiaohua's gaze fell on the portrait. He looked at the old man wearing Confucian robes and a Confucian crown. He had a serene expression and clear eyes, as if he understood everything in the world. He already understood that this must be the famous great Confucian Zhu Shi of Zhu family. Therefore, without waiting for Zhu Qing to say anything, Xiaohua stepped forward and bowed. Junior Xiaohua greets Senior Zhu Shi. Zhu Qing and the other Zhu family disciples were gratified. They hurriedly tidied their clothes and retreated to the side. They bowed back and said, "Thank you, Taoist Xiao." After the greeting, Zhu Qing invited Xiaohua to sit at the guest seat at the table under the portrait. He accompanied Xiaohua on the other side. When someone brought fragrant tea, Zhu Qing personally poured a cup for Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Taoist Xiao is a Taoist senior. You usually drink spirit tea. I don't have any good tea here. This is fragrant tea that I personally went to Maocheng Mountain to pick and stir-fry last year. Although it can't compare to the spirit tea of Taoist sect and perhaps not to the tea of Cha Nu country, it is superior in that it was made with the jinqi of my Confucian cultivator. Taoist Xiao can taste it." Xiaohua smiled and raised his cup. He took a sip, but he felt that there was a kind of bitterness in it. This bitterness didn't turn into sweetness like the spirit tea. Moreover, when the tea entered his stomach, it didn't turn into any jinqi. He knew that it was as Xu Qing said. But just as Xiaohua was about to put down the fragrant tea, his heart skipped a beat and he took another sip. He felt the bitterness at the tip of his tongue faintly release some layers. After tasting it a little more carefully, there were actually some mixed feelings. He unconsciously took another sip, letting the tea overflow in his mouth for a moment before swallowing it into his stomach. "Good!" Xiaohua put down the teacup and praised. "The path of Confucian cultivator emphasizes the tempering of the world. If you don't experience the various states of the world, you won't understand the essence of the noble spirit. Zhu family is worthy of being the descendant of a great Confucian cultivator. Just from a cup of tea, you can make people taste so much. Old Sage Zhu is really amazing." Open WeChat now, click the plus sign at the top right, choose to add friends, add a public account, search for Kitty-Ann's Hongwenwang, and follow the public account. You won't miss any updates. -13. Chapter 3847. Taoist Zhao's Confucian cultivation is indeed extraordinary. Zhu Qing puts down his teacup and says with a smile, "Although my Zhu family's clear heart tea is good, without someone like Taoist Xiao who understands the true essence of Confucian cultivation, how can you taste it?" Xiaohua waves his hand and says, "Fellow Immortal Zhu, you flatter me. I only have a feeling occasionally. It's nothing. Compared to your family with a long history, it's far inferior. Alas, how is the current Zhu family still a Confucian family?" Zhu Qing bitterly smiles and shakes his head. Then, as if he has thought of something, he stands up and says respectfully, "Taoist Xiao, please come this way." "Oh?" Xiaohua is slightly surprised. He follows Zhu Qing to the hall next door. This is also a hall, but it's slightly smaller than the previous one. This hall is even more simple and crude, with only one incense burner table. On the wall behind the incense burner table, in the same position as the hall, but a bit lower, There is also a portrait of Xiaohua who is standing with his hands behind his back. Xiaohua in the portrait is vivid and lifelike. His eyes are filled with determination and compassion. The Taoist robe he is wearing is the one he was wearing when he saved Zhu Qing that day. When Xiaohua sees this, he immediately understands what Zhu Qing wants to do. Sure enough, Zhu Qing takes out a rather old-looking red chair and respectfully places it in front of the incense burner table. He says softly, "Benefactor, I greeted you before to welcome you. Now, I would like to invite you to take a seat. My family would like to thank you for your kindness." That's inappropriate. Xiaohua waves his hand and says, "I didn't mean to save you. Moreover, fellow Immortal also paid me back that day. After I accept it, we are even. Now, there is no need to make such a big fuss." Zhu Qing says with a smile, "Benefactor is wrong. That day, Benefactor saved me and a dozen of my family members. I used the Zhu family's ancestral treasure to repay you. On one hand, I was really grateful at that time and wanted to give the best thing of my Zhu family to Benefactor. On the other hand, to be honest, my Zhu family has been dragged down for tens of thousands of years because of that treasure. I was tortured in prison, so I also wanted to leave and throw it away. Giving it to Benefactor is really a bit of a misfortune. Thinking about it, I feel very guilty. However, fortunately, it seems that Benefactor didn't feel burdened because of it. I feel a bit relieved." "Indeed." Hearing Zhu Qing's words, Xiaohua also felt a bit strange and asked, "This Xiao has never met anyone from a scholarly family who has come to ask about this item. Since your Zhu family has been forced by other families, why haven't they come to this Xiao?" Zhu Qing thought for a moment and smiled bitterly. "Maybe they don't believe the authenticity of the news. Or perhaps their benefactor's whereabouts were uncertain and they couldn't find him in a short time. Or perhaps they just don't want this thing to fall into the hands of my Zhu clan. As for the Dao sect, they don't care?" "Yes, of course." Xiaohua nodded slightly. After rescuing Li Xiang from the Copper Pillar state, he hadn't stayed in the Black Wind Ridge for long. Later, the Black Wind Ridge was flattened by Sun Jian's troops, and those scholarly families couldn't find any traces of him. Of course, it was more likely that they did not believe the news and did not believe in the existence of the enlightenment of heavenly writing. Otherwise, they would have followed Duanmu Liangxing to the Misty Mountain Maze formation. "Of course, this is nothing," Zhu Qing said solemnly. "What I want to thank our benefactor the most is that you lifted the curse of my Zhu clan." "Oh, I understand." Xiaohua nodded and smiled. "So fellow Immortal Zhu is here for this." "That's right," Zhu Qing said respectfully. "Compared to the grace of being saved by our benefactor, this grace is completely beneficial to my Zhu clan's descendants. If we don't enshrine our benefactor's portrait, if we don't pay our respects to our benefactor, my Zhu clan won't have the face to exist in this world." "Forget it." Xiaohua nodded. "If I refuse again, I'll be hypocritical. Benefactor, please take a seat." Zhu Qing respectfully invited Xiaohua to sit. Then, everyone knelt at Xiaohua's feet according to their status. Not only that, but in a moment, the Zhu clan's descendants also came forward and knelt down to kowtow to Xiaohua to show their gratitude for breaking the curse. Although everyone in the Zhu clan had to thank Xiaohua, the Zhu clan was indeed in decline. In less than an hour, everyone had finished paying their respects. Then, Zhu Qing invited Xiaohua to take a seat in the hall. What surprised Xiaohua was that Zhu Xiang didn't appear. The old man who was looking for Yu Zhongquan also didn't come back. After Xiaohua sat down again, Zhu Qing poured tea for him and asked curiously, "Actually, there's something I don't understand. I'd like to ask our benefactor." Do you want to ask me how I knew that the Zhu clan's descendants were cursed?" Xiaohua said with a smile. "Indeed." Zhu Qing nodded. "Where the curse of my Zhu clan came from and when it came from, even I don't know. What's more, about the curse of my Zhu clan, my ancestors never told anyone about it." "How did you know?" "Moreover, this curse was extremely insidious. My Zhu clan tried everything to break it, but couldn't. All the men's cultivation was restricted and all the women suffered. Our benefactor saved my Zhu clan from the abyss of suffering with just a few medicinal pills. I won't hide it from our benefactor. Perhaps I won't be able to see the rise of the Zhu clan in my lifetime, but without the curse, my Zhu clan will return to the top of the list of scholarly families sooner or later. How did our benefactor get such a miraculous medicinal pill? Ha ha! Xiaohua laughed. He looked into Zhu Qing's eyes and said word by word, "Perhaps you'll know about this in the future. However, at this time, forgive me for not being able to speak frankly." "Hee, it doesn't matter," Zhu Qing said with a smile. "No matter what, our benefactor is our Zhu clan's benefactor. It doesn't matter whether I know or not." While they were talking, an indescribable cold wind suddenly blew in from outside the hall. Not to mention the other Zhu clan disciples in the hall, even Zhu Qing trembled and raised his head to look outside. However, after a short while, the cold wind passed and everything returned to normal. There wasn't anything particularly strange about it. Zhu Qing's complexion returned to normal. Just as he was about to speak, Xiaohua said with a smile, "Fellow Immortal Zhu, what's going on with Wuyuan County? The ghost that the old man spoke of, what's going on?" Hearing Xiaohua ask about Wuyuan County, Zhu Qing's face became sad. He said in a low voice, "I'm also very clear about the situation in Wuyuan County. Not only Wuyuan County, but Jinghua County and Fanchan County had also become ghost towns. Many people had starved to death in this disaster, and there were even more people who had committed inhumane acts in order to survive. For example, cannibalism could be found everywhere. Alas, not to mention these three counties, even the entire Fengxiang country is covered in disasters. Even if we're cultivators, it's extremely difficult to fight against the heavens. The Immortal Palace is the head of the Confucian cultivators in the hidden Immortal continent. In these past few years, the Immortal Emperor has repeatedly issued immortal decrees, ordering the officials of the Rain tribe to rain everywhere to quell the disasters. However, the promised favorable weather has never appeared. Of course, when Benefactor mentioned Wuyuan County, I also feel ashamed. Wuyuan County is the foundation of my Zhu clan. This Zhu clan manor used to be the pride of Wuyuan County. Unfortunately, the current Zhu clan is far from the previous Zhu clan. Even if I want to help the people of Wuyuan County, I don't have the strength to spare. When Benefactor came to my Zhu clan manor, you must have already seen the barrier blocking the main road. In fact, at the very beginning, when the disaster just started, I often gave away food at the manor. However, in the end, not only did my Zhu clan run out of food, I was also powerless to deal with the vagrants attacking my Zhu clan manor. Therefore, I had no choice but to use this method. Xiaohua looked at Zhu Qing and raised his hand with a smile. He took out a qianquan pouch and handed it to Zhu Qing, saying, "In that case, these are for you. Can you tell the truth?" "Ah? This much?" Zhu Qing knew that Xiaohua had food in his hands. However, when he received the qianquan pouch, his expression changed greatly. Just as he said, cultivators have great magical abilities and boundless magic power. However, to be able to make so much food appear out of thin air has already surpassed the scope of magic power. Xiaohua retracted his smile, narrowed his eyes, and lightly said, "This amount of food is enough to solve the disaster in Wuyuan County. This Zhao's strength alone is insufficient, so it is difficult for me to distribute it fairly. I presume that Xu family is much more skillful than this Xiao. This matter will be left to Zhu family." "Yes, I understand. I thank Taoist Xiao for his great kindness on behalf of all the people of Wuyuan County." Zhu Cheng hastily stood up and saluted Xiaohua again. Xiaohua's face didn't have much of a smile. When Zhu Qing stood up, he said indifferently, "Zhu Qing, you're really too polite today. However, if you really treat me as your benefactor, why are you hiding something from me?" "Benefactor." Zhu Qing's face revealed an awkward expression. He was still somewhat hesitant. Xiaohua sighed and said, "When I came here, I knew that Zhu clan was the master. Therefore, I respected Zhu clan very much and didn't release my divine sense to investigate. If fellow Taoist Zhu doesn't want to tell me, do you want me to investigate it myself? Big brother. Just when Zhu Qing was hesitating whether or not to speak, an untimely voice came from outside. Soon after, the old man who flew away to find Yu Zhongquan flew back. As soon as he landed, he hastily shouted, Jin or he. However, when he saw Xiaohua sitting on the seat of honor, he also had some misgivings. He looked at Zhu Qing and wanted to send a sound transmission, but he didn't dare. Speak, Xiaohua said coldly. Unless you don't speak. Even if you send a sound transmission, I can still hear it. Speak. Zhu Qing waved his hand and helplessly ordered. Taoist Xiao, the old man hastily said. The Yu Zhongquan you're looking for should have been invited by Jin Er. Several months ago, he came from Yifeng country to our Zhu clan manor. I've already asked the servants who take care of Jin Er's daily life. When he heard that Yu Zhongquan had already been in Zhu clan manor for several months and he didn't know, Zhu Qing's face became somewhat unsightly. However, the old man's next words shocked him greatly. At this time, Yu Zhongquan and more than 10 other young juniors, under Jin Er's lead, have already entered the Yuan Ghost Cave. Ah? Zhu Qing exclaimed. You didn't catch up? Do you want to know more exciting developments in The Legend of the Cultivation God? Open WeChat now, click the plus sign at the top right, choose to add your friends, add your public account, search for Kitian's Hongwenwang, and follow the public account. You won't miss any new updates. 13. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.